Here we go, Doom Drop podcast number 4. We got
Ooh.
Xun, myself. I think we're going to be looking to get some guests on the hook pretty soon.
Yeah.
Just kind of opening things up with some conversations between Xun and myself. We're going to talk about a few different things today, including some of our background and that kind of thing, so you guys can get a feeling for who we are a little bit more. And yeah, we've got some good topics here today. But first thing that we both wanted to talk about, we both were mentioning this going into the podcast, was talking about the Neuralink news.
Right. Yeah, we both had that same topic on our agenda, which was very funny. We both wanted to come in talking about that.
So if you guys haven't heard the news in the past couple of weeks, the very first ever Neuralink was surgically implanted into a paraplegic man, guy who had some sort of accident. I think it was a diving accident. Can't move his arms or his legs. Everything below the neck is completely paralyzed, and they did the surgery. He recovered really quickly, and they got him on the Neuralink, and he can't say enough good things about it. If you watch the video,
Right.
you go ahead and search, first Neuralink patient. I'm sure you can find the video. He is just like super excited and bombastic about how good the software is, even though it's the first generation. It's the first ever one. He's just blown away because there's not a lot of tools for people who are paraplegic.
No. Well, yeah, I mean, he's kind of resorting. If it wasn't for Neuralink, he'd basically be resorting to some kind of mouth stick, which is basically like it sounds how it is. It's basically a stick that goes in your mouth and has like a bit of fabric at the end, so you can still use like a touch screen, like an iPad or iPhone or something. But besides that, he would have access to use his wheelchair through the use of a straw, and basically it has two functions: sucking and blowing. So, say by blowing it hard or soft, it will make it go forward or turn right, and by sucking hard or soft, it will make it turn left or go backwards. So, it has some functionality through conventional means, but to be honest, very limited. Whereas with Neuralink, the guy was able to like stay up all night, I think for like 7.5 hours playing Civilization 6 and having a blast playing his career. So yeah, like definitely a different kind of game-changing thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how trapped you must feel in your own body. Being a paraplegic, you can't move or do
Right.
anything. You're just, relegated to a few hours a day maximum of mouth stick use, of course, right? Like mouth stick, it sounds so barbaric. Just such a blunt tool to try and navigate the technological world. Um, and then on top of that, you can only use it for a couple hours because you're going to get mouth sores and all kinds of
Right.
problems. Something I didn't even think about, but he was talking about it, and yeah, it sounds incredibly frustrating. But with the Neuralink tool, he's able to use all kinds of different software. He's able to control things around him, his computer, his other devices. I mean, it's just incredible. It's really incredible what the new technology can do. And yeah, he's super excited about it, and I can't blame him at all. His life's been kind of opened up, I think, after using that for the first time.
Well, yeah, not only that, but I mean, this guy kind of like everything fell into his lap. The stars kind of aligned for him for this to happen. Like he also just so happened to live only 2 hours away from the hospital they set up to do it. Like everything was just kind of falling into place for him, and he was the guy that was like wanting to like take the earliest available appointments, the earliest possible interviews, and like try and crank it out. And when they did go to collect data on him when he first like had this stuff going, he was like doing like a crazy session where he was like knocking it out of the park and giving them like better data than they'd ever gotten before, and like beating all their previous scores of like how much he was able to like interface with it and actually get like more clicks with his brain, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, so he knocked it out of the park as well. Like as not just the fact that he's the first patient, but it also seems like his ethic in the process was very commendable.
I found it so interesting, like his explanation too of kind of how it works, is that as a paraplegic guy, he says that he can still kind of feel where his hands and arms and legs are and stuff. And
Right.
although he can't feel any sensation from them, he like he can feel the mind body connection
Hmm.
of like trying to move his hand. He can feel that he can try to do that even though he can't feel anything. Like you can just imagine you trying to move your hand, but it doesn't move at all, right? It's really hard
Right.
to even imagine it. But what he was saying is that with the Neuralink software, um, he was able to kind of bind commands to these different body movements. So like lifting his left finger would be like a click or something like that. You know what I mean? Or pressing his left finger would be a click. And so mentally he would do that, and the Neuralink would pick up on the brain signal and bind that to a certain key function, which would be the click. And then whenever he wants to click, he just thinks about moving his finger or pressing his finger, and boom, he gets a click function.
Right.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, he did say it's extremely hard to explain the sensations that he feels while he's interfacing with it in that way.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was basically along those lines where he was saying it's like he's still using his hands to do those things in terms of the sensations he's feeling. It's just
Mm.
he's not actually doing that. It's all mental. But the sensations that he's experiencing are like he has those, like a phantom limb type deal, where he's actually still kind of using those implements that have been rendered not quite as functional as he'd like them to be. Somehow it's now like a matrix type deal where his brain is now being stimulated in such a way with the electrical signals that it's like he's actually moving his limbs and fingers and again to interface with this.
Yeah, one thing he said he was super excited about was that the potential for the software, and that in the future maybe people could have an injury like him, go to the doctor and get an implant, and then be able to walk out again. So I guess the idea is that you would have like an electronic bridge over your spinal cord where the
To bridge the
brain
gap.
signals, yeah, the brain signals are being picked up by your Neuralink, and then there's like another stimulator on the other side of that bridge, that's controlling your body, and so that you kind of map it out like this is what it feels like to move my right arm, like,
Hmm.
and then it kind of like sets it up so that you're not moving your body, but you're sending a signal to the Neuralink, and the Neuralink is moving your body, and you could become like unparaplegic from doing that. Would be kind of incredible. I mean, that's obviously a long way down the line, but he's immediately that's where his head is going, right? He's thinking like there may be a day when nobody is paraplegic anymore.
Right. If you guys are having a hard time like wrapping your mind around like what exactly we're talking about, if you've ever seen the show Rick and Morty, there's an episode called Pickle Rick where he kind of uses like the body parts of a rat to kind of assemble like a bodysuit, if you will, and he's using electrical signals to send to those limbs to activate them, even though they're not his limbs. He's still able to gain functionality of them through a very similar means.
That's a interesting reference there. I wonder how many people who are fans of the channel and fans of our casting are actually also Rick and Morty fans. I'm sure there's quite a bit of
I think there's a
crossover.
bit of crossover. I'm sure there's a bit of crossover there.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, with this Neuralink thing, that's like the ultimate maybe goal in the future, something like that. But for now, being able to control some things on a screen, uh, I
Big
mean,
step.
it feels so mundane to us, right? You could just
It's not though, really. For them,
yeah,
it's so huge.
it's massive. It's massive for them. They're instant life improvement, like tenfold life improvement, because they can actually
Right.
do things that instead of just sitting and watching TV or just talking, like they can actually manipulate objects. They can manipulate electronics. Just incredible.
They can stay up late and play games again. You know, what I mean, there's so imagine if you at home, imagine you're a gamer, right? Probably, presumably, one you're a gamer, and now imagine you suddenly can't play games for a whole year, not allowed to play any games. You're kind of just like stuck in a chair, can't do shit unless people have a lot of compassion for you. You're pretty much fucked, all right? And now someone comes along and goes, "Oh, by the way, little look, 5 months time, a little bit of brain surgery, a little bit of tests, a little bit of interviews, and then suddenly we can put this thing in your head and you can play games all night again. I mean, that's like crazy to these guys. That's not even money. That's just like, heaven. Well, after you've been through that long with not able to have any kind of functionality that you would like to have, to suddenly be able to be like, oh yeah, just stay up for 8 hours playing games all night if you want. What? That's going to be crazy for these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, this could also eventually be used to do work as well, right? If you're able to work online, if you are able to code or something
Mm.
like that, or do some sort of online work, um, you might hire somebody in the future and you not even know that they're paraplegic. It turns out that they're doing everything through
And they might
Neuralink.
be a hell of a lot more capable than people that are showing up, walking around. You know what I mean?
Maybe it just depends on the technology and yeah, their own intelligence. I think that, I mean, that's huge, right? These paraplegic people, for basically ever, if you're a paraplegic, you're reliant on everyone else for the entirety of your life, for the rest of your life. Maybe there is a world in which a paraplegic person, even if they don't have like a really good family support structure, they could work,
Mhm.
make money, and pay for people to uh, you know take care of some of their needs so that they can live. That would be amazing.
It would be amazing. And honestly, like there's a lot about this stuff that gets my heart all warm and fuzzy. Though being the nature of the podcast, I also have some reservations and also some things I want to devil's advocate and give a little pushback on, and talk a little bit about like the humanist versus transhumanist angles a little bit, because there is there's some lines of concern here as well, right? Like
Mm,
this isn't all like sunshine and rainbows either.
sure, sure, sure. Well, my first thought when I was watching the when I was watching the Neuralink presentation, I was like, "Wow, they're gonna use that for StarCraft someday." I bet you. I was like,
Can you imagine?
imagine someone
Oh man.
can use Neuralink to control their mouse, and then they can use both hands on the keyboard to macro. Oh man, how crazy would that be?
Do you
I bet
think there
someday
was a
there's gonna be Neuralink in a tournament with Neuralink for StarCraft.
Yeah, there's a game. I think it might be Red Alert 2 or something. I think it might be Yuri. There's a character in it. Not Yuri, but there's a unit in the game maybe and the line is like when you click on the unit, it's like a voice line. I think his voice line is the mind is quicker than the eye, and that's what I thought of when I was like watching this stuff. I was thinking to myself, hang on a minute, like really, this is what Elon Musk has been talking about for a long time. He's been talking about like the limitation of the bandwidth of like your
Mm,
so-called meat sticks, your fingers and stuff. And like really we've got these like quantum computers between our ears in terms of like what our brains are capable of, right? So
hmm
if we are able to somehow directly interface with the world using our brain, someone that's even remotely intelligent is going to be all kinds of like omniscient. You know what I mean?
mm,
Potentially, with the tech gets developed enough. Like that's crazy what that could potentially unlock, and does give me a little bit cause for alarm in terms of maybe only the elite get access to like the most up to date, you know, generation. So like they're like ahead of the curve, so they've got like access to the newer generations before like the wider consumers, so they've got an advantage because like they're processing things better or what have you. That's like one angle of concern, but there's also a lot of others that I want to get into eventually.
yeah. No, I can see that as cause for concern, but you could probably say the same thing about like cars or something like that too, right? Like when
I
cars
wouldn't say it's the
first got
same thing
invented.
though. Like I would
Not
say it's a
no,
bit
not
apples
the
and
same.
oranges. Like a car gets you from point A to point B regardless of how flashy it is and like
hmm
how fuel efficient it is, right? Maybe it helps you save some money if you're like saving on gas or what have you, but it's not going to help you like analyze the stock market better. You know what I'm saying?
Mm. I'm just saying like that people get, richer people get the cars first, right? And then they get the best of the
Right.
best cars, so they're able to get where they want to go faster than everybody else, right? Which is a big advantage, but um
Yeah, but I think this is even like a
eventually
not
everybody
just
can afford a car, right? Pretty much
right,
everyone
right.
has one. They have something, maybe it's not the fastest car in the world, but they can still get what they need, You know what I mean?
from
But
point A to
yeah,
point B kind
it
of thing.
yeah, but it does make a difference. Like we are talking about apples and oranges. There's no really good comparison. It's like comparing computers to like comparing
Yeah.
AI or something like that. You know, where it's like the future functionality of like a really strong AI or really powerful AI is like just light years
Mm.
different, just orders of magnitude different than just your typical computer, right? Like yeah,
Right.
it's
Well,
crazy.
this stuff is so groundbreaking that there's
Hmm.
no experts on it. All expert means is someone that is like well versed on what has been before.
Hmm.
Like he's knowledgeable on the industry and what has happened up until that point, but not beyond that, right? He's not a fortune teller.
Hmm.
So this is the problem: is there's no experts in this field. It's a completely new field. Like there's people like Elon Musk, and there's lots of really intelligent scientists and engineers working for him that are way more qualified to talk about it than Saiyan and I. However, even they don't like know the full extent of what they're talking about because they haven't done it yet. Like everything is still fresh to them as well.
Yeah, they don't know where the technology's going. Yeah, what's the next breakthrough for sure.
It's both it's exceedingly exciting and horrifically terrifying at the same time. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah, it's like a Black Mirror episode. Like
Oh yeah.
wow, I can't imagine that that's gonna be the technology in the future. It's so cool, but also at the same time, like wow, that's gonna
Whew.
fuck. This is gonna be a big problem. Like we could see some bumps coming down in the road, but of course
Mm.
we have to give some credence to the idea that yeah, we just don't know. Like we can try to predict bumps in the road, right? We can try to predict that things are going to go wrong or things are going to go right. We can't really predict the
Well,
future though.
there's two attitudes we could. There's a few, but to
Hmm.
simplify, there's a few attitudes we can take of all this stuff with AI, with Neuralink, and all this stuff. We can have the attitude of like, we got to be really careful and like really regulate this stuff and make sure it doesn't get too crazy, and make sure there's not like a huge war between transhumanists and like human purists that like don't want to assimilate with technology and they want to remain pure to humans, and the other side want to transform into cyborgs kind of thing, and it's like a
Hmm.
whole religious war between like technology versus spirituality or whatever. Anything's possible, but you could have the attitude of the opposite where it's like, hang on a minute, we've already passed through a few great filters as humanity. We haven't blown each other up with nukes yet. We haven't died off to like ice ages or famines yet. The climate change hasn't completely ruined us yet, blah, blah, blah. Rather than like worrying about all these potential pitfalls like AI and all these other things that could devastate us, why not just go full steam ahead with the assumption that if we're going to make it, we're going to make it, and if we don't, we don't, and we just want to cross through as many filters as possible to kind of like have the highest rate of advancement and the highest rate of success, like kind of like playing from behind in StarCraft with like, okay, if we're going to make it out of this, we have to play a certain way. We can't like try and play too careful because that won't be enough. Even if we do have a chance at winning, we have to just go like all in and just hope for the best and hope the stars align kind of thing. It's like two
Mm.
ways we can think about this.
Yeah, I mean the smartest people in the world, a lot of them are preaching for caution, right? They're preaching to like do the cautious response and like slow things down and take extra care with regulation and stuff. I'm not smart enough to know what's the right choice,
But I
but
don't think even if we do go cautiously, we can keep it in the box.
mm,
I think the argument that could be made here is like, well, hang on a minute. Even if we do err on the side of caution, we can't control all the state actors in the world. We can't police every individual entity. Like you can slow it down with regulations and what have you. Like maybe Elon Musk didn't get FDA approved or what have you to do this first implant or what, slow this progress down and stuff like this.
mm,
But you can't stop that indefinitely. Like, what if like China or Russia or something do it like state funded and private, and you don't even know about it until it's like already been done?
right.
And this kind of thing could already be occurring around the world, and it's even possible that technology is being rapidly advanced commercially and to the public now that it's kind of like the brakes are coming off now that things are ramping up, and countries like China and Russia like have much more to play for, and like they don't need to use conventional warfare anymore. They don't need to rely on nuclear warfare anymore. There's economic warfare, there's cyber warfare, there's all kinds of like propaganda and other tools that can be used to leverage against your foe in this day and age. So you don't even need to worry about that kind of conventional mindset anymore. There's so many different ways you can interact with the world stage. And I think that maybe that's why we're seeing such a sudden ramping in like this technology recently, because it's like the brakes have come off, because it's like now it's like all hands on deck, because the first who gets the AI, the first who gets these implants going is probably going to be like setting the pace for the rest of the world going forward.
Yeah, this cyber warfare thing is massive, and that's I the biggest fear I think is that AI will be used for those type of
Absolutely.
means. As a first, like the first thing that they're gonna do is try to take over the opponent's systems, you know, America's systems or whatever people in the West systems. Just try to take over everything, get
Well,
control,
what
as much control as possible.
if you have a sophisticated enough general AI that's able to catch incoming threats and deal with them in real time without any human intervention, that gives you like a green light to do whatever you want to your opponent as well. Like think of it as like if you can nuke your enemy and he can't nuke you because you can shoot down his nukes, like you have total leverage over him, right? The same way in
Yeah.
cyber warfare, if you're able to attack someone's infrastructure through cyber means and he can't attack you because you've got this like AI defense grid that like will just lock down any attempted threat and like be able to like either shut down the systems to prevent any kind of catastrophe or some kind of countermeasure that's like doesn't rely on like human implementation or human intervention, so it's purely automated and in real time, so it's like super quick reaction speed. Even the best hackers in the world would then start struggling. That's the issue right now in cyber warfare. It's much easier to attack than defend, but AI could change that a lot.
Mm, maybe. Yeah, it's hard to see where it's going, man. It's really hard to see where it's going, but maybe you're right. Like maybe it's time to just like, you know, instead of worrying about opening the box, just open it and unpack it, put up all the things on the wall, you know, set up the
It's like facing
furniture
your demons, maybe.
and
Like
hope
rather
that
than like
everything
trying to
doesn't
run
fall
from the
apart.
demons. Yeah, yeah. But I
Integrate
mean,
it into the world.
that might be the only play in terms of like, because I don't think we have the ingenuity or the intelligence or the discipline or anything to be able to keep it in the box and to regulate it and to have any kind of control over it. And I think any inclination that we do is nothing short of arrogance.
It's happening so fast now, man. It's blowing me away every time I see like new AI tools coming out and how quickly they're developing is it's scary. It is scary, but we talked a lot
And that's
about
just what we know
AI.
about.
We talked a lot about AI last episode, so let's talk a bit more about Neuralink, man. And I think
Sure.
you said some more. You had some other fears about Neuralink that I thought was interesting.
Okay, so there's some deep philosophical, horrific things to consider with this stuff. On the one hand, it's beautiful that someone who's paraplegic can regain functionality of their limbs again, in the sense of, as far as they're concerned, they're interacting with the world in a more normal way. In the sense of, like, as far as they're concerned, it feels like their fingers are still moving and they're still thinking about using their hand to do those things. You could argue that they're not really doing that, they're just training their brain to align those things. So, because they train their brain to think of clicking with the action of raising their finger, what have you, that's causing that bridge to like give that phantom sensation of using their finger whenever they try to do the action. But that's irrelevant. Alignment and what have you, that's completely irrelevant. What is a factor, what is relevant is the fact that while they're doing that, they're of the illusion that they are the ones that are controlling that, but it's not. It's still the implant. And if the implant is set up in such a way that whenever it electrically signals your body to do something or to do an action on screen, if it creates that same stimulation in your brain, that it feels like your fingers moving, it feels like you're making that choice, you will, it's an issue of discernment. You will no longer have the autonomy or the ability to discern whether or not that was you doing that or the implant. And that opens up the door for, like, say, hackers to like make you do something about you realizing it's you doing it. Or maybe you're on Amazon like shopping and you're buying something you don't actually want to buy, but somehow the implant has like kind of tricked you into thinking you did want to buy it. And it kind of is a very like a Black Mirror thing of like not really having a sense of freedom and autonomy anymore, because you never can know for sure if it's actually you wanting to do these things or if it's somehow the implant like influencing you.
Yeah, it'd be interesting in the future. Maybe they have like regulations where it's like, okay, the Neuralink can only receive signals. It can't send signals to your brain, and they like have FDA approved. Like, oh, we're checking all of them, making sure that they're not able to send signals. And maybe there's certain off market implants that are
Hackers will
like,
always find a loophole.
they're adding in these like extra functionalities to where they can maybe like stimulate your brain in certain ways, and people want to buy into that because then they can like improve their mood or whatever, or like help themselves stay more disciplined or something. I don't know what is even
You
possible,
can't.
but like I don't know what's possible with the Neuralink if you've got like a direct connection to your brain, and the Neuralink is figuring you out slowly, right? Like you're giving it more information about what the signals in your brain are actually saying, right? Like each signal represents a movement or a thought or a feeling, uh, and the Neuralink is slowly like deciphering what those are, and then if it's able to send signals back into your brain, then maybe you can eliminate things like depression. You know what I mean? Like every time a
Yeah.
signal for like this negative emotion comes into your brain, the Neuralink like counters it and sends a signal into your brain for a positive emotion, and it kind of like shuts down your
But
depression. You know what I mean? Like those type of things are
this
totally
is but
possible.
this is also totally strange as well. There'll be a huge counter movement to this of people that are like, say, purists or like
Hmm.
humanists, and they will say, well, hang on a minute, whoa, you want to play God and like simulate your emotions and like completely rewrite? So what happens if like you lose a family member and you're feeling really depressed about it, and suddenly your implant like makes you feel not too bad about it? Like you're like ridding yourself of like an authentic human experience
Hmm.
potentially.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of strangeness to this, and there will be a lot of people that are like, yeah, man, jack me in, like hook me up. I want to start like, buying stuff with my mind. I want to play games with my mind, man. Like telekinesis, let's go, dude. You know what I'm saying? They're
Hmm.
gonna be all over that. But there'll be a lot of people that are really against it. And I think that this could be another form of division, form of culture war, form of control, form of like another layer of the matrix being just bestowed upon us, and could potentially be devastating as well as exciting.
Yeah, imagine the conspiracy theories as well. Like people
Oh yeah.
are gonna be going nutty. Your
They'll
implant
say
is
this is the mark of the
controlling
beast
you.
and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, 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 yeah. It'll
Yeah.
be all about that stuff for sure. And there's good reason for it as well, because this is very scary stuff. And it doesn't matter what persuasion you are, if you're religious, if you're a bit of a conspiracy theory guy, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're right to be concerned. And whatever lens you look at this, like in terms of like, oh, this is like playing God, or like this isn't right, in terms of like this is going to cause like economic devastation or what have you, or like more like imbalances in society because like the elite and the wealthy will have access to the better technology or what have you. Like there's so many angles you can look at this, but you're right to be skeptical, and you're right to be fearful, and you're right, like like we talked about in the previous episode about that quote from Small Soldiers, like, you scared, good, like we're all scared. You'd have to be crazy not to be scared, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it it is a frightening time to be alive, man. It's a scary time to be alive, but also a very exciting time to be alive. And I think a lot of the fears that we've had over the years have been uh, unwarranted, like things that people were really afraid about with video games, making everyone violent, or like people were afraid of, Y2K, the internet was going to like break down, and people are afraid of all kinds of different things, but it's usually these sort of underlying issues um, that have like difficult consequences, bad consequences, but are not like super revolutionary. For example, like people were really afraid of the internet and what it was going to do for jobs, and it was going to take away tons of jobs, and computers were going to ruin the economy and take away everybody's jobs. It's just kind of made more people more efficient, but at the
Hmm.
same time it's given people access to like unlimited uh sexual content, and like there's tons of porn that everyone can watch, and there you can uh, creep on other people constantly. You're connected to social media all the time, and it's kind of like slowly degraded people's ability to socialize with each other. in like a weird
Right.
nefarious way. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like
I know exactly what you mean.
it's sort of like it's more
It's
it seems like it's just
disconnection through connection.
it's like creepy consequences, like creepy nefarious consequences that slowly like creep in, rather than just like a sudden switch. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
It's
I know
like
exactly what you mean.
it really like improves everything immediately, but then like those extra little tailing consequences slowly
And
creep in.
we're we're being engineered to be psychopathic, where we're more concerned about that short term gain rather than those like long term relationships that we're losing out on. That's
Hmm.
like Jordan Peterson would say that's like the definition of psychopathy, being more like short term gain oriented and less like long term relationship oriented. That's like you could argue is the definition of psychopathy, or at least in some people's opinion.
Mm. So I mean, I'm not too worried about like the major consequences. I'm not worried about like a Terminator type situation. You know what I mean? Like I'm not worried about AI turning around and nuking the whole planet. You know, like I think that this is going to vastly improve a lot of our lives. The Neuralink implants going to improve a lot of people's lives. It's going to save a lot of people from a lot of desperate situations, like being a paraplegic, that type of thing. It might even cure a lot of different mental illnesses, like I was saying, the depression
But it won't
problem,
stop
right?
there.
But with those, you know, positives, there's going to be slow creeping negative effects
Yeah.
on the entire
And this is the
society as well.
problem. I think this is even more nefarious because it will be done under the guise of this altruistic, like we're going to help all the paraplegic people in the world. And I think that's super great, but it won't stop there, will it? It'll be released to the consumer market. Everyone will want to have it. We'll all be jacked into the matrix essentially.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, really jacked into the Matrix. It's kind of funny that in the Matrix there's like this massive cord that like locks into your brain, right? And then we get to 2024 and it's like a tiny little chip, like microscopic, that just plays into your brain. Like, dude,
Yeah,
it's
much less
way smaller than you would ever
less
imagine.
intrusive. Yeah, it's less
Yeah,
intrusive,
less
right? Even more
intrusive.
like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. I could get that done. I could get that done.
Yeah, I remember watching the Matrix for the first time and watching the that giant like spike come out of the back of the dude's head. Like
That would turn people
holy,
off, right? Most
I,
people would then be turned off to the idea, right? If that was the case, you had to like stick this massive spike into the back of your head. A lot less people are going to be down for that. But a little tiny chip in your head, not so bad. Sign me up for the mark of the beast.
yeah. I mean, it's just it is very funny. Um, just thinking back, like all the different technologies that people imagine for the future and the size difference, right? They always think that the things are going to be way bigger than they actually are. Um, we're capable of
Hmm.
making things so incredibly small now, right? Like it's
Well, yeah, I mean, computers used to take up the size of a whole room. You know what I mean?
exactly, right. So they think about you know, there's like a science fiction movie where there's a supercomputer and it's this massive structure, like a whole building or something like that. Nah,
Yeah.
bro.
Do you know what I also think would be really cool though? Is
Mm.
like even though we miniaturize technology, what if there's like an alien race out there that has miniaturized their technology so much where it's like these little tiny chips, they don't need like big structures, but despite that, there's still like entire planets where it's just like covered in technology. Like the entire planet is just dedicated to like being one big supercomputer. You know what I'm saying?
That's funny that you say that. I know we were talking about the three body problem, which is a great new show, guys. If you haven't seen it on Netflix,
Don't
it's
spoil that. I've
fucking
only seen like
amazing.
one episode.
You still haven't watched anymore, eh? Okay.
No, I'm watching it with my cousin once a week. So, like each podcast, I would have seen one more episode,
All right.
basically.
Well, in that show, the aliens take the miniaturization of technology to another level that's really insane. So you're gonna look forward to that. But it's yeah,
Okay.
there's different levels, I'm sure. If there's an alien race out there that was truly thousands of years in advance of us, um, I mean,
Well, depending on how far away they are, If they're 1,000 light years away, then it
Mm-hmm.
means it takes 1,000 years for the light to reach us. So if at the moment we look at them and they're 2,000 years in advance of us, they're actually 3,000 years in advance for
Mm-hmm.
us because we're looking at them from the past, a
I'm,
1,000 years ago.
I'm just saying, if they are 1,000 years in advance from us, their technology would look like magic, right?
Oh
That's
god,
old
yeah.
saying.
Oh yeah, like indistinguishable from magic. Even if it was like probably a few hundred years, it would to us it would probably be like, well,
Yeah, that's the beauty of that TV show, right? Is everything that they're doing looks like magic. There's so much like magic going on, and the technology behind it is secret. So it's like
and this
it
stuff
would really seem like magic.
now. Let's get a little bit conspiracy theorist. Do you think that that kind of stuff is happening in the world right now, where they're working on some crazy stuff, and like it would be as far as we're concerned, we might consider it magic. I'm talking about those like black budget like military projects where like trillions of dollars go missing from the Pentagon and like get sucked up by these like really like non-disclosed things where they're building like I don't know like Iron Man suits and God knows what as
Hmm.
prototypes for like future potential use. Obviously, like they're not going to be ready for like military use right now, but they're like prototyping stuff that's like 50 years in advance of modern day tech.
I lean towards saying yes, but at the same time, I'm also almost so cynical. I feel like it's just corruption. Like these black budget programs, they're just taking money and just draining it out. I feel like they're not even producing anything worthwhile. That they
You're
might
chalking
just
it up
be,
to pure corruption only.
yeah. I'm saying like they might be working on a few things, but in my cynical brain, like I'm thinking that it's mostly just corruption. But the thing
Mm,
is, we'll never know unless there's a big war, right? If there's a big war, then all of the toys come out. You know what I mean? Like everything they've been working on is gonna pop
right.
to the front, and we're just gonna be mesmerized at
That's what
what's
could be
actually
scary, dude.
capable.
Like there might be things happening that we can't even explain because we
Mm-hmm.
don't even know what's going on. Like all of a sudden the sky's a different color or something. We're like, what?
Mm,
And like all of a sudden like planes just like fall out the sky or something because they're being like ECM jammed from like hundreds of miles away or something. You know what I mean?
or tens of thousands of troops just suddenly like appear in your country. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like,
they've got
wait,
like
what?
underground like tunnels that you
Mm,
never even knew about or something. Like
or
all kinds
they've
of
got like some
craziness.
sort of portal technology or something where
Yeah,
they
who
can like
knows, man?
move through an extra dimension.
I mean, it does sound like something out of Stargate or something, but I mean, who the fuck knows, man?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like a stealth bomber that like dimensionally shifts, so you can't even. It's not even literally on this plane of existence. It just appears in the sky.
Sounds like some like EVE Online tactics where you're like messing with the game code to like not even show up on the heads up display, but you're still able to like bomb the shit out of someone.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I have no idea. Like instead of like a bomb that's like a EMP, it's like a AI bomb where it just like infects everything that it within a certain range of its like signal. You know, they just send in a bomb that just shoots like a basically like a Wi-Fi signal out to everything and just infects everything and turns it against whatever owners are using.
Mm. I
Yeah.
think the most cunning way would be like tricking like FDA and those kinds of entities by like you don't necessarily like put poison in someone's food per se, but like say you put the ingredients for poison in the food chain. Like you say in the water supply, there's one chemical, and in this particular brand of food, there's this other chemical. They're completely innate on their own, but when combined in the stomach, can cause a certain reaction, kind of thing. Like there's so many like creative ways you could do to like fuck with a country or something. You don't have to like bomb them. You know what I mean? There's so many
Yeah,
interesting
sure.
creative ways you could do.
Sure thing. Yeah. Absolutely. And those organizations, those regulatory organizations are so full of holes and corruption. It's would be relatively simple, I think, to slip something like that by. Just grease a few palms or like make things a little bit too difficult to understand the
Mm.
complexity of the plan, and then they're just gonna completely like not even realize what's happening.
While we're on this particular vein, I recommend anyone listening right now, including you, saying there's a show called Utopia. It's the British version, not the American remake. Do not watch the American remake, okay, guys? Even if you like the original British one, do not watch the American remake. It's not like the American Office, okay? It's terrible. But the British original one, I think from 2013 or something, wow, watch that. Like a very interesting show, kind of in the same theme of what we're talking about here.
All right, Utopia, check it out.
Utopia. Mm-hmm.
It's weird when reality starts to look like science fiction, man. Very strange.
Yeah, very, very strange. But I mean, sometimes reality is stranger than fiction, I find.
So you getting the Neuralink implant?
I don't want to declare my allegiance just yet, saying, where's the fun in that?
Bro, if you don't get it, I'm gonna whoop you at StarCraft.
You want to bet? I might still beat you with my biological man body. Just nothing, born and bred here in Zion kind of attitude, you know? Don't need no help.
Dude, the speed that I'm gonna be able to achieve with that Neuralink software, man.
Well, I'm hoping that your base speed is slow enough that even with the help of the Neuralink, we'll be about even still.
I love the idea of having like a Neuralink StarCraft tournament in the future.
Yeah, man. I mean, wouldn't it be interesting if like it gets divided though? You know what I mean? Like in the same way, like there's like a Paralympics. Like, what if there's like a Neuralink kind of like there's some gamers that compete as Neuralink gamers, and some people that are like non Neuralink gamers, and you have to divide the categories. So you have like a pure human category and like a Neuralink category.
Yeah, that might be possible. That might be possible. If it's that much of a difference between the ability to play, where like you have to like mouse users and Neuralink users, you know?
Yeah, I'm curious
Because
how that will translate because there might be that like say certain things like macro would be easier in StarCraft with Neuralink, but it also might be the opposite. Is like it's harder to micro using that interface, and actually the old-fashioned keyboard and mouse is like slightly better for like precise control. If you know what I'm saying?
might be, it might be. I don't know where we're gonna get with that technology, but could be interesting someday in the future.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, it would be pretty amazing if it was just a person, like literally just sitting in front of a computer playing StarCraft with their brain, even if they're like not using a keyboard at all. That would just be surreal. Just imagine that, like a game that was created at the birth of the internet, basically, right at the
Yeah.
very earliest stages of the internet, and then
56K modem times.
and it survived and still played all the way through it until people can play with their brain. Just play just totally with the Neuralink interface. That would be so insane.
Kind of hilarious, yeah, because it'd be like a coming together of two shifts in eras, if you know what I'm saying, like two technological shifts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we
It'd be
lived through it. We lived through it. We witnessed it. That would be yeah.
Yeah, witness me, Sam. Witness me.
And then
This is the Mad Max type shit.
We'll cast that game, and it'll be like the seminal moment. That'll be like the.
We'll cast the game using Neuralink. Or you'll have Neuralink and I won't, and we'll do like see who's the better caster.
How is Neuralink gonna help with your casting?
No, that's what I'm saying. I will cast without Neuralink, and you cast with Neuralink.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any effect on your ability to speak, does it?
Not right now necessarily, but who knows? Maybe you'll be able to like use your mind to like look up game statistics while we're playing or something. Who knows?
Right. Yeah,
You're like looking up the player statistics while we're casting, and you're like, oh, by the way, like 3 games ago, this happened. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? How are you getting that?
Yeah, I think that's the carrot that gets people to start like receiving information from Neuralink as well, right? Like at first it'll just be like, okay, I only want Neuralink to take
Interface.
information from my body. Like I'll give it information, and then it reacts in the world. You know what I mean? Like I can use Neuralink to use my computer, but like once you start getting information from Neuralink directly downloaded into your brain,
And
you're
there'll be
able
a lot of
to,
incentives for that.
yeah, you'll be able to look things up and immediately get the information into your brain. That is, I think, the thing that opens the
Saying
door to people actually
one
wanting the other way, the other direction of input, and then it's like really opening up the door to a lot of shit.
one step further, saying imagine like future generations of this tech, and it is like the Matrix in the sense of like you can download kung fu into your body, where it's
Mm.
like you can just like get the Neuralink to tell your body how to move to like do a high kick or something, and like you can get the Neuralink to like teach you the range of motion you need to actually do these things, and then suddenly you can like learn kung fu interfacing through the Neuralink, even though you've never done a lesson in your life.
Well, I've had this thought in my head for a long time. Actually, is like, how amazing would it be, from like an entertainment point of view, if we could have someone with Neuralink do something really amazing, like for example, um, do a let's give a good example, like snowboard at the Olympics. You know what I mean? Like do all the flips and shit and like really cool stuff with the Neuralink implant inside, and the Neuralink like
Right.
downloads all the information of what that feels like to
And
do
then you
that.
can experience that
Yeah, and then
without doing it.
yeah, you can at home be like, let me just sit back and just feel what it feels like to do that, and you just totally have that experience.
Which is another strange thing because we might get to a point where we're no longer having our own experiences anymore.
Right, because the experiences that we can get on our own are so like
Mm.
mundane in comparison to, you could just download the experience of being like a fighter in Syria or something, or you can
See
download
what
the
it feels like to
experience,
be a DJ or something, yeah.
yeah, a DJ at like a massive concert, or a
Not
hip
just any
hop
DJ, but
or
a
a
Chad
rapper.
DJ,
Yeah,
someone that's like crazy good as well, like someone that can probably do it better than you could if you tried to do it yourself. So it's like, why would I bother trying to do it myself? I can just like jack into this guy who's like already amazing.
right, or drive like F1 or something, and you can just experience what driving in the F1 race would
And
feel
people
like.
would be all about that, right?
Yeah.
There's such a tiny fraction of people on the planet that can even handle driving with those G forces and not like
Hmm.
freak out with like how quick reaction speed they need, like fighter pilot type shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the game or movie that really captured that idea the best was Cyberpunk, right? Like but they only did it for
Yeah,
like, there was like they were trading in like black market videos like that, where it was
yeah.
like a
What were
snuff
they called
film.
again?
I can't remember. It was Brain Dance. That's what it was. Brain
Brain
Dance.
dance, yeah, brain dance, yeah. And that's what worries me is that we're moving into a very dystopian cyberpunk kind of future where it's
Mm,
going to be very high tech, low life, and I'm hoping it's not going to be as low life as it is in these games and other worlds that have been foreseen.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I don't know what it's gonna be like, man. I feel like in one sense it's very nice, useful. It's gonna improve a lot of people's lives, but at the same time, there's those nefarious consequences, right? There's like those creeping issues that are gonna slowly get into our
Right.
society. Like, yes,
We got the
people are enjoying their lives a lot more because they have all these cool experience. They can, not everyone can go to the moon. Do you know what I mean? But you could
no,
download
the
the
experience.
Neuralink experience of going to the moon from a astronaut perspective, and then actually feel like you did it, and that would be insanely beneficial. Like, it's so cool. Um,
Right.
for you to just be able to download that and get that. But then at the same time, like, maybe people are going out less and enjoying life less, because they're just at
But
home
it'll
doing
ruin
these
the
things.
novelty though, right? It'll
Mm,
ruin the novelty of everything. Everything will be mundane. It'll be like, oh, going on like chilling, like in the cyberpunk anime. I don't know if you ever saw the Street Runners anime
yeah.
version of that.
Hmm.
But do you remember like when they're like just
Edge
chilling on the
runner.
moon, looking at the Earth, kind of thing? Edge Runner, sorry. Do you remember they were like chilling on the moon, looking at the Earth, kind of thing? It like that will, even though that would like mesmerize us right now, it
Hmm.
might become a thing that's like completely mundane and actually just like chilling out with your buddy after work, kind of thing.
Maybe. I don't
You'll
know,
lose a
man.
lot of novelty.
It's hard to say what's gonna
Uh,
happen, man. I don't know what I would do if I was, capable of having that technology. If I had the option of just like right now, downloading a VR, basically like a cyberpunk brain dance of whatever experiences that I would want. What would I do with that? You know, would I be sitting here doing that for 12 hours straight? Maybe I would. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't
And
even
those
wanna be part of reality.
that's the thing, right? You wouldn't have to. You could just like do whatever you wanted from your basement. Like basement dwelling will be even more even more prevalent. It'll get to the point where you don't even have to leave your house and you can just get everything you need delivered to you and just have like a Matrix-esque experience.
Yeah, that's wild. I can't imagine, but
And not everyone will do that though. There'll be like some people that are like just jacked in doing that like day to day, and they kind of live in that virtual world type thing. But there'll be some humanists that don't do that, and that's what will cause a shift and a culture war, as well as a spiritual war, as well as an actual war potentially
I
between
wonder.
humanists and transhumanists.
I wonder, Well, there might not be
And the
very many.
transhumanists will win
What are
because
they
they'll be more technologically advanced.
what are they fighting over though, exactly?
The spirituality, because you could argue that you're basically going to become a machine at that rate. Like you will lose your humanity eventually. You won't be a human anymore, and there's no, they would argue that it's like akin to selling your soul or literally like giving up your soul and replacing it with a machine. And then you have to worry about immortalization. So right now, one thing that protects us from tyranny is the fact that these tyrants can die. Hitler can die. These horrible people can die, and like you'll be free of them eventually. Maybe you won't escape them immediately because you have to deal with their offspring or something and the future generations that they have. But eventually, you have this like safety net of eventually one of those motherfuckers is going to die, and you're going to be okay again. And that will disappear if there's any kind of life extension or immortalization because of this transhumanist shit. So then eventually some guy gets power and maybe he's like some CEO of like some super corporation that has the governments in his pockets, and now the governments just exist to extract money from the people and put it into his hands, and he has total like control over like at least that part of the world, and he can just subjugate and like oppress the people and like for not just his lifetime but potentially like multiple generations of their lifetimes because he lives forever and they don't.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I feel like if you're a humanist and you don't want to have the Neuralink um in your brain, then I don't see any reason. Like, are you gonna fight the people who want Neuralink so that they can't have it? I feel like
It's
that's a
not that
losing
they
battle.
it's not that they might. It depends on how society is structured, right? If we move towards like a more socialist type deal where it's like even though we've got AI, even though we've got Neuralinks, we're still going to like try and like help lift up people a little bit, then maybe not. But that won't happen probably. What will happen is like the people with the technology will get all the wealth, the elites with the technology, and then the next who will have the next amount of wealth will be the people, the working man who also has Neuralink, and the people without Neuralink won't be able to compete. So they'll be bled out on the market, won't be able to compete with the market, and they'll be struggling for resources, both financially and actual resources of food and shelter and what have you. Might even become like such an issue that they feel like they have to fight because they're being bled out of existence because they just can't compete with like the new standards of like the average worker is now like so advanced compared to a biological human that they're just being completely wiped out in the market and can't even like earn enough food to live.
It's a weird dichotomy. It's a strange thing that's happened in our uh, society that makes me feel like you might be right. Is that uh, as technologies continue to grow and become more and more powerful, people have become way more efficient at creating value. The uh,
Mm-hmm.
the efficiency of one worker has gone up tenfold in the past 100 years, but the actual like living standard of a regular person has kind of dropped down in the past 20 years, right? It's kind of gone Uh,
They're wealthier. The working class is wealthier than the people of that time, but we're talking in relative terms, though, right? The disparity of wealth is what you're talking about.
I don't really care about wealth disparity. I care about like what's the lowest standard of living. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
the regular person, the average person, are they better off? Or are they worse off than
Well, they're
in the
better off in the
past?
sense they have like access to clean drinking water and they have electricity and heating and stuff, right? Like
Well, they
some
had
things,
those
like,
things 20 years ago too, right?
that's kind of what I'm saying. They have a higher living standard, but relative to what the wealthiest had back then. Because here's the thing, like a wealthy guy a few hundred years ago would be like thinking that your living room with your TV and lights are like magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but today's standards, that's considered like the median or the nominal thing to have if you've got a little bit of money. It's not too weird to have a TV and lights and heating and stuff, right? If you've got a little bit of money.
Mm. So as long as you have lights, power, food, those types of basic essentials, internet, those type of things, I think that like there's not going to be a reason for people to fight the powerful, you know,
But
the
that
Neuralink
and
people to like
and
have a
initially they
war.
will have access to those things like we have now. Like we're being distracted with a few wants, so you're going to go along with the ride because there's enough things to incentivize you. Like you can still go down to the store and like grab some coffee, grab whatever you want, any treats that you want to kind of satisfy your ego and keep you placated and like part of the system. There's enough there, there's enough carrot there that you're not going to mind that like stick in the background. And it's kind of like the frog in the water analogy, where if you put the frog in the water and very slowly bring the water to boil, the frog will not notice the change in temperature and will eventually be boiled. Whereas if you put the frog in the hot water all at once, it will notice and get out and save itself. And we are that frog right now being slowly brought to the boil. And we're simmering a little bit right now. We're slowly being brought up to that boiling point, and we've not yet reached it. And we think we're totally fine. We notice the water's getting a little warm, but we're not concerned yet. I don't think we're going to get concerned quick enough.
I think there might be a case in the future with transhumanists and humanists, people who are accepting Neuralink and people who reject it, where there's actually going to be like a lot more people who are accepting of Neuralink, and then that demographic is going to like shift slowly over time, where like people who accept Neuralink are going to have less kids. They're like going to, you know, live less in the real world
Mm,
and live more in the digital world and have, you know, less interactions with real people, and thus, you know, have less relationships, have less sex, have less children. And then the people who are humanists who don't accept those things will basically dominate in terms of reproduction, and eventually over, you know, have more. There'll be more regular humanists than humanists. It's kind of like a natural progression, but I think for a long time it'll probably be dominated by the transhumanists. It's just it's really it's strange to think about that. You know, all over the world, basically, even at the level of technology we have now,
mhm.
birth rates are declining. Right?
Yeah.
We don't have Neuralink yet, but birth rates are
Testosterone is at
falling.
an all-time low.
And you can think of like people who are living in low you know, these countries that are not considered technologically advanced, are having still high birth rates and outnumbering the people in the high technology areas, right? But uh, just imagine that on steroids once Neuralink and everything is
Right.
established, right? If what we are talking about ever comes to pass, where Neuralink is able to feed your brain information, and you can do things like have the brain dance, that type of stuff. How much of an impact that's going to have in the same direction as what we already have is having that impact, right?
Not only that, but they might like potentially even regulate childbirth in the future, where it could be done under the guise of like, oh well, everyone's like so incapable of being good parents because you're also like stuck in your mindlessly self-indulged like brain dance world, that to have kids you now have to like go through like official capacities that are going to monitor the process and like make sure you're eligible first and blah, blah, blah. Make it even harder to have kids. You know what I mean?
Well, in China right now, they're forcing people to have kids. They're saying that it's like a 2-child minimum that you have to have children. That
Two
could,
child minimum.
yeah, that could be the future.
Well, I mean, they did kind of shoot themselves in the foot with the one child policy going on for as long as it did, I think, especially
Yeah.
because it encouraged because they only had access to one, they'd much preferred the boys as well. So there's a lot of girls that got shafted in that system over there. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's a little bit depressing, but
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. The one child system was or one child policy was absolutely devastating and completely short-sighted, but that's pretty much everything that communism does is incredibly short-sighted and way too heavy-handed.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go into the political debate about communism, but maybe we should save that for another episode.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a little bit skeptical on a personal level about this stuff, but I also empathize with both sides. I see why people are super excited about it. I'm also super excited about it. I'm very neutral about this subject because, like, on the one hand, I feel like we need to take the brakes off and, like, we can't control the box. So we might as well unpack the box and deal with the cards we're dealt as best as we can rather than try and fight it. Like, rather than struggle against the current and try and row with it, let's just try and sail with the current and see what we can do here, because we're going to go through some crazy, great filters that could potentially wipe out humanity or at the very least, like, cripple us. So if we are going to be going through these big gates, these big like filters that could potentially devastate us, why not just go full steam ahead and sail and surf along those rifts as best as we can? And if we are going to survive as humanity and we are going to progress, then maybe this is the only way we can do that.
I think this is like a Winston Churchill quote, but it's like if you're going through hell, keep going, right?
Yeah, yeah. I kind of feel like that. Like, I think we quote him a lot, but one of the reasons why I like quoting him is because you're familiar with him, and a lot of our listeners will be. Whether or not you agree with him or disagree with him is irrelevant. Like, there's a lot of things he says I disagree with, and a lot of things he says I agree with. That's just how I am. I think everyone should be a little bit more like that, where even if you don't necessarily like someone or you do like them, don't necessarily agree with everything they say or disagree with everything they say. Try and take each statement and each thing they're talking about as his individual thing, and try not to like get too caught up in how you feel about people, whether or not you like them or dislike them. But as far as John Peterson's concerned, he did talk about I can't remember exactly the wording he used, but it was like, it was something to the effect of you have to, when you're dealing with like demons or what have you, like, it's into the dark side of humanity. Like, the best way to deal with that is to keep going, face it, and come back like girded from that, to come back like strong and resilient from that. And now you're able to tackle the world with this resilience because you face that darkness and you've come out the other side. And the same way with like what you're saying about the Churchill quote of like, when you're in hell, keep pushing forward. Like, what else are you gonna do? Like, just cry about the fact that you're in hell, or like whine about it, or like get too fearful? Like, fear is a reaction, courage is a choice. And I feel like we've got no choice but to be scared, but we also have the choice to be courageous as well.
Yeah, I like the Churchill quote because it's like don't it's so clear, like don't stop. What are you going to do? Stop and smell the roses when you're in hell? You just got to push
Yeah.
through. You got to get out of there. No, you got to keep going. If you're going through hell, keep going. I love it. Are you familiar with the idea of anti-fragility? Have you heard of this term before?
I have, but let's talk about what that means anyway.
Because what you were saying a moment ago, I think, is like a description of anti-fragility. It's like if you've got a box and you've got like a something glass inside the box, you've got something inside the box, and you shake it and it breaks. you shake the box and the thing inside breaks, then that's what we call fragile, right?
Mm.
But if you've got something inside the box and you shake it and it doesn't break, then that's called
Resilient.
that's resilient. Yeah, that's tough, right?
But there's one more level, and then there's anti-fragile.
Yeah. So the anti-fragility is you shake the box and the thing inside becomes stronger. That's
Hmm.
anti-fragile, and I think
And
that's what you try to be as a human being, is to be
that's
anti-fragile.
that's what we that's the Superman. That's like the optimum, because if you can do that, holy shit, are you strong? Like when someone accosts you in life, or say like someone breaks into your house and steals your shit, like you can be fragile and be devastated by this and take years to recover, and it's like completely fucked your life up. You can be resilient and be like, oh well, shit fucking happens, and just deal with it and keep moving forward. Or we could be anti-fragile and be like, hang on a minute, no, I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to become a smarter, less naive, more vigilant person that's not going to be like so easily deceived next time for this to happen again. And I'm going to let this experience shape me into being the version of myself that is not necessarily improved, but just, more aware, more evolved in a micro sense.
Yeah, your body, as a general rule, is anti-fragile. Like your muscles, right? If you break down your
Mm.
muscles, you put them through hell, then they become stronger. And mentally, you can become stronger if that's your goal, right? If that's how you think about each situation, then you can become anti-fragile, right? You think about not being damaged by things and just being hard and tough. That's not good enough. You need to be maybe broken down, but to grow big, better, stronger, more resilient in the future.
Harder, better, faster, stronger.
No,
But I do
it's a
think
good
that
concept.
that's just. But do you not think that society kind of? I'm not so sure of the synonym I want to use, but for lack of a better one, like glorify victimhood in the sense of there's incentives to be fragile in society. That could be taking the form of like, someone having a disability or disorder, and they use that not only as a crutch but as like, a means of identifying and interfacing with the world. So if you're going on X or Facebook or what have you, and you're making a big deal about, like having like, I don't know, bipolar, or you're making that your whole identity, or like, hey everyone, I'm autistic, or hey everyone, I'm this, or hey everyone, I'm that, and having that kind of mindset of like defining yourself and putting yourself in this like fragile state already, like I feel like is a very slippery slope, because if you keep going down that route of like looking through the world through the lens of like poor me, or having that kind of like victim mindset, I feel like you'll never ever develop the kind of resilience or anti-fragility needed to actually deal with real world situations that are going to be coming your way in the future and might hit you harder than Mike Tyson punching you in the face ever could.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. But I think that this is like a communist ideology remnant. It's a remnant of communist mentality, right? The victimizer mentality of everyone in the society is either taking advantage or being taken advantage of. Everyone's a victim or a victimizer, and you, as in a communist
Yeah.
landscape, you have to be a victim, because if you're not a victim, then you're a victimizer, and you deserve to be destroyed by the society, right? You need to be destroyed and removed from the wider society. So like this is what you would see in any society that gets subverted by communism, is that everyone is clamoring to show what a victim they are, so that they will not be destroyed, so they'll be treated well by the society, by the government, by the wider society. And it's just it's so pathetic. It's so pathetic. Everyone walking around with this completely negative mentality and mindset. It's not
Yeah.
progressive for the society, and you can see how backwards everything is in societies that are that have gone through communism, right? They've dropped back, 50, 100 years in terms of their progression before they could even make one step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I want to really like dig into some of the things you were talking about just a moment ago, especially about the people out there and like having this abuser slash abusee mindset.
Hmm.
Like, there's a British synth pop band duo called Eurythmics. They had a song called "Sweet Dreams." Most of you probably know the Marilyn Manson version. You know, "Sweet dreams are made of these." That one. But in those lyrics, it says like some people want to use you and some people want to be used by you. Some people want to abuse you and some people want to be abused by you. I really do feel like in society there's this like coin of narcissism where you're either this like more covert side where it's like you've got this more like victim mindset, but deep down you're kind of feeding off this like negativity of like being abused and used. You kind of almost like that glorification of that, and you embody that more because it gives you an excuse for not having to take responsibility in your life for certain things. Whereas there's also this other side of not the narcissism coin where they people that want to be abusive and sadistic. So you've got this sort of like sadomasochistic dynamic going on where there's abusers and abusees out there creating these toxic relationships and environments where some of them are like, you know, getting off on abusing one another, and the other people are actually kind of getting off on being abused, even though it's causing them trauma and it's not healthy for them. In a way, it's like it's also validating for them because like it's attention, it's the kind of connection that they've come used to either from their dysfunctional childhoods or what have you.
It's ironic that most of the people who claim to be abused or who claim to be a victim are the most abusive and the most victimizing people. Like they're so toxic. You can see it online all the
Right.
time. There's just
Yeah.
millions of different examples of people who are,
Yeah.
really claiming this victimhood status and then turning around and doing horrible things to people who, they view as abusers, even if the abuse is so minuscule. You know what I mean? Like it's such a minor abuse that maybe even isn't real abuse. It's just like a perceived abuse. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and
Exactly.
not intentional, certainly not intentional, just a perceived on the part of the abusee. And now they're going to turn around and completely, like, blatantly abuse that person and feel
Through a
justified
justified
about doing
lens.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And
It's
these are the covert narcissists that I'm talking about. These are the most dangerous motherfuckers out there, by the way. They're very hard to spot. With a much more traditional narcissist, very egotistical, very like you know, what's the word for it? There's a good word for it. I can't remember off the top of my head. But like, you know, they're very egotistical and like all about
boastful.
themselves. Both, yeah, they're all about it. You know, they're all about that. But the covert narcs, they come across really charming and nice and sweet and like poor me kind of attitude. And you're kind of, oh, this guy seems alright, seems pretty chill. But underneath that exterior, they might even seem like goody two shoes. They might even go to the soup kitchens at a homeless shelter, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, hang on a minute, Sean. If they're going down to the homeless shelter and helping the poor, doesn't that make them good people? Ah, yes, if they're doing it for the purposes of lifting up the community and helping, sure. But these people aren't doing it for those reasons. They're doing it to create an image. They're doing it with the short-term gain of fostering an image of being this nice person, as opposed to doing it for the legitimate reason of, say, just liking helping people, helping the local community, or what have you. They're doing it specifically to create this image because they're not going to abuse people in the outer circles. To the stranger on the street, to the guy at the soup kitchen, to the guy on the road, they're going to be nice as roses to that person. But when they get home to their wives and their kids and stuff, that's when the cycle of abuse will actually be taking place behind closed doors and away from anyone else, because that's how abuse is most deadly. Because from the outside looking in, that person is not an abuser. They're this guy that's super nice at work and he goes out and helps out at church and he seems like a really cool guy or really cool girl. But underneath it, behind closed doors, there's a cycle of abuse taking place, usually to the people closest to them.
I think the covert narcissists aren't as covert as they think that they are. A lot of them are, on Twitter or whatever, on X,
Yeah,
and
those are the low functioning ones.
they think that they're the narcissist. Like, think about it like this: is that the covert narcissist, thinks that everything is about them, right? That these
Yeah,
abuses are all about them, right? They're the victim in this whole situation, even though there's, people who are way more victimized than they are. There's things that are going on in the world that are way worse than what's happening to them. The world revolves around them. They are
Mm,
the victim in the story, and so thus they are uh, justified in whatever response that they do. Right, no matter what they
right.
decide um, to do, they are justified in that, and it's like that's the biggest narcissistic viewpoint of all. Right, thinking that they're completely justified in
Yeah,
abusing other people.
they have very warped sense of reality, and the mental gymnastics they're able to do inside their own heads and lie to themselves. They're such good deceivers that they're very good at tricking themselves. So as far as they're concerned, they actually are these nice people that really do have your best interests at heart. And if you could just dress a little bit less slutty, you'd be such a better girlfriend. And they kind of got this mentality of like, yeah, I'm not actually controlling you. I'm just like helping you be a better person. They'll look at it through whatever lens they need to justify their behavior. Either that's like through the lens of you've done something nasty to them, so it's okay for them to do nasty to you, or they'll justify their controlling behavior through like justifying in terms of like doing something altruistic or for with good intentions as far as they're concerned, despite actually doing something abusive.
All right, let's change gears here. I'm gonna use the washroom. We'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we're back. How are you doing, Shun?
Doing pretty great, feeling pretty refreshed. Got another coffee here. I got some nice barista oat milk, and I make sure when I boil the kettle, not that you give a shit, I let the water settle a little bit so that I don't scorch the coffee. Because when you pour in the hot water, if it's too boiling, then it'll actually like burn the coffee and like kind of give it a bit of a bitter taste. So I was very strategic in making myself a nice beverage of coffee. I don't usually drink coffee, only whenever I'm casting, doing a podcast, or something very specific.
Hmm. I hate to be a bummer, but you probably shouldn't drink oat milk.
I mean,
It's
I think
bad
I've
for
heard you
you.
talk about this before.
Yeah,
Maybe there's some. Maybe you're right. I don't know.
there's very little actual oats. There's no milk in oats.
Really,
The
I thought they kind of like got the oats and like wrung them together and lots of milk squirted out. I'm joking.
yeah,
Reminds me of that. Like,
it's like
do
almond
you ever
milk.
see?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's this like YouTube channel I think called like the Carbonara Effect or something, and he does like kind of like a magic show, but he does it under the guise of like being like a shop owner or something. And like one of the things he does is like get literal almonds and squeezes them, and more milk shoots out. These people actually believe there's milk inside the almonds. Oh, that's funny, man.
Yeah, I think there's like a handful of almonds, and then every almond milk container, like a liter of almond milk, there's like a small handful of almonds that
Just
there's
almond
really
flavored milk.
it's basically
What's in
just
the milk then? How are they making this shit, huh?
some industrial ingredients, just
Oh yeah, they're
like
just getting rid of some waste products. Like we'll
yeah,
just give this guy something to flavor their tea with.
yeah, exactly. It's not good.
It's mostly ash.
Yeah, it's mostly like some sort of weird filler chemical that they don't really know exactly what it's doing to your body. It's been
I'm about to
passed off,
investigate
but
this. You got
yeah,
me curious now. Some oat milk conspiracy theory to look into.
yeah, you should look it up. A lot of
Should look
these,
into it.
a lot of these like replacement um things, foods are horrible, just horrible for your body. Like the fucking Beyond Meat burger or something like that.
Mm.
It's mostly like I think it's like a huge percentage of it is vegetable oil, and vegetable oil is terrible. It's terrible for your body. It's just horrendously
So what do you think about
damaging.
almond milk then? How are you on almond milk?
There's no milk in almonds, man. It's mostly
Yeah, but
filler.
what about the health benefits of say almond versus oat milk? Would you say that almond is also a problem, or like maybe almond's a better alternative?
No, they're both the same. They're the same sort of thing. The amount of almonds in there is minuscule. The amount of oats inside oat milk is minuscule. It's mostly these filler products that they're using. These like industrial ingredients that they're using is mostly what you're drinking. You're only drinking a tiny bit of almond or a tiny bit of oat. And
Now,
yeah,
someone might argue with you, not that I am, but someone else might be like, well, hang on a minute, saying like hot dogs are kind of garbage meat, but mechanically recovered meat. But I like the taste of hot dogs, so why do I care if it's got some weird produce in it or it's made in a weird way? If it tastes good.
just imagine if a hot dog was like 90% some like filler ingredient and 10% meat. That's what you're drinking when you drink oat
Isn't that
milk.
basically what hot dogs are after the cheap
No, hot
ones?
hot hot dogs
The
are
good hot
like
dogs are pretty good.
ground up cartilage and stuff like that. It's still
Mechanically recovered
meat.
meat, yeah.
Uh
Wow.
it's still animal product, right? Like it's
Yeah, there's
it's
something in there that's animal.
yeah,
Whether or
it's
not it's good is
right.
up for debate. But the good hot dogs though are pretty well produced in terms of like it is quite a lot of meat and just good amount of like animal fat and what have you. And like there's not a lot of additive to it.
Right.
But usually the hot dogs are pretty cheaply made and are that like mechanically recovered meat kind of type shit.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. No, I don't think that hot dogs are good for you either. I'm just saying that almond milk is worse because it's not even almonds. It's like 10% almond or 5% almond.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's not a good alternative. A lot of these alternatives are terrible, like the Beyond Meat, like I said, mostly vegetable oil. And
Yeah,
vegetable
I agree
oil
with
goes
that.
through an incredible industrial process. Um, that's like, I mean, a lot of these people who would push you to eat Beyond Meat burgers would say that processed foods are bad for you, right? They would say like,
Right.
"Oh, these processed foods, you shouldn't be eating all that. Just stick to these other foods." But then they push Beyond Meat burger. It's like, dude, this shit is the most processed stuff imaginable. It's beyond processed. It's an industrial product completely. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to look more into it, to be honest with you. I'm curious now about if I should stop drinking oat milk or not. Sayan's opened my eyes. He can
Mm.
show me the door, but I have to walk through it.
Yeah, that's how it is. I send a lot of information to friends and stuff about different foods, health stuff. Most of
I
it just
appreciate
gets
the tip.
ignored. Most
I
of it gets
appreciate the
ignored.
tip. I'll look into it, man. No, for real, I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm
Um,
open minded.
well, I'm glad to hear that, Shun. Very glad
I,
to
I
hear
don't.
that.
I mean, I don't want to be so open-minded that my brain falls out like some people, but at the same time, I do want to really like keep my lens as broad of scope as possible. Hopefully, get that high resolution pictures. You know what I'm saying?
Where did this open-minded mentality, this open-minded demeanor come from? From your family, from your childhood?
I don't know actually. Now that you ask, I can't think of like the thing that was the catalyst that initiated this, so to speak. But my dad was my dad my dad like he kind of got me thinking a lot as a kid. Like it wasn't so much that he made me open minded, but he did challenge me a lot. Like he wasn't the kind of dad that would just let you say some shit. If you said something dumb, he would explain to you like why it was dumb, not necessarily in an abusive way or anything, but like he talked to me like an adult even though I wasn't an adult. So even when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or however old I was, he'd be like, oh yeah, is that really what you think? Yeah, well, what about this? And he'd like challenge my suppositions or whatever I kind of bullshit I parroted out because I'm just a dumb kid at this point. And he would challenge me on that and force me to think about it, or force me to think about something I'm talking about. So not necessarily my own views or beliefs, but if I say paraphrase something someone else is saying, he's going to challenge it because he wants me to think deeper about it. He doesn't want me to actually just like think like what someone else thinks. He wants me to actually go into that and he had a very scientific orientated mind of being skeptical about everything, and like he had a very scientific process of like trying to disprove things before being content with that information, if that makes sense.
That's cool. I mean, talking to your kids like they're like a adult, I think that's a huge benefit to a child as you're coming up, learning how to challenge your beliefs and really think things through rather than just parroting out ideas. Yeah, if I feel like that is a trend that I see with a lot of people that I like who are smart is that their families didn't like go easy on them and treat them like a
Mm,
child, like they were treated like an adult. They were
right.
challenged and pushed um, in their younger years, and they became like more de- better developed. I think it's
Yeah.
something I'd consider if I was a parent, like really talking to my
I,
kids like an adult.
I can empathize because there were points in my life where times that he did do that, it made me have a more reaction of fragility where it like in the moment made me feel like, oh fuck, I'm just a dumbass or something. It did kind of have that effect on me at times. But over the grand scheme of things, over the course of years, it did make me more anti-fragile. Initially, it made me fragile in some instances, but then it also made me very resilient in others. And then eventually, it developed anti-fragility, where it was like, not only is this challenging me, but it's forcing me to grow and be more introspective and more like open-minded and considerate of like other viewpoints and other possibilities rather than being so easily like led by others.
It's good to get challenged a little bit when you're younger. Like I really value my cousin when I was young. He tormented me a little bit in terms of just like just teasing, you know? Very light
Mm.
teasing, but he was very funny and it helped me to just kind of laugh at myself. And when other people would tease me, it made it less potent, you know, because they were not nearly as funny or as like cutting as my cousin. So, you know, their dumb little like high school jokes would be like, "Oh, really? That's the best you could think of?
Waters
Come
of the
on."
ducks back to you now, yeah, and that's the thing. That's kind of what banter is, though, right? It's like that mental hardening. It's not meant to draw to bring you down. It's meant to either develop resilience or develop this anti fragility, where it's like, yeah, and what, mate? I've heard worse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the intention anyway, for sure. But I feel like it worked well for me. And
Mm.
yeah, I never you know, I would get frustrated with people at in high school and stuff, but I never felt like they were that intelligent, like, wow, this person's definitely better than me, you know what I mean? Like I always felt like they were just a dumbass being mean.
Well, usually people, if they're doing it from a place of trying to actually bring you down and be a dickhead about it, they're usually not that funny. If the funniest people are usually the ones that aren't actually trying to bring you down, they're just
Mhm.
trying to be funny. They're
Yeah.
just doing it for the sake of comedy. So everything they do is like a comedic opportunity. You know what
Mhm.
I mean?
Yeah, for
That's why
sure.
they come across as more funny because they're not actually trying to just be dickheads. They're trying to just like seize any moment for a comedic opportunity.
Exactly. And they're only mean if you think that they're mean, right? If they're being mean, it's it's
Mhm.
if you can just laugh along with it, then it's not actually real
But you can also
meanness, right?
take you can take their power away. Say it even if it was someone being mean to you, actually being mean to you, you take
Mhm.
their power away by laughing along with it and also doubling down on their own deprecation. So if they're like saying like, "Oh yeah, by the way, saying you know you're a real sausage monkey," sometimes you're like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm a real sausage monkey." Yeah, yeah. And if you double down on the joke as well, like you're taking a lot of sting out of it, and it's like,
Mhm.
then what do they have over you? It's kind of like the Eminem thing of like saying everything he can say about you as well. So it's like, now what? Where are you going to go with this? Like, yeah, I am that, and what?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's a good message to any young person coming up right now if they're struggling with some sort of bullying or that type of thing. It's it's good to just like break down what they're actually saying and just go like,
Hmm.
you know, find a way to make it funny, make it funnier
And
than what they've even said. Yeah.
if you can't do that, if you don't feel like you have like either the charisma or like the mental freedom to like in the moment think of like something witty to say, just have a few stock lines prepared. Just to get you going, just so you have the resilience. So, like, so when they say something to you, you're like, yeah, yeah. Well, if you want my comeback, you have to scrape it off your mum's teeth, mate. Or if, like, you know, like they say some bullshit to you, and you're like, yeah, well, your teeth are so far apart, it looks like your tongue's in prison. You know what I mean? Like you just have a few stock lines prepared to like just like you know roll with the punches and like give something back, even if it's not like properly tailor made to them and in the moment.
Mm, great advice from Shun for those youngsters out there. struggling in the social landscape of the 21st century, 2024. I can't imagine being in high school right now. Can you imagine 2024 being in high school? What a mind
I
fuck.
honestly think it'd be easier for me right now. I mean, I can only speak from experience. I grew up in some rougher areas. Like at the time, the area that I grew up in was like rated like the third most like chaviest slash like antisocial area in the UK. It's much nicer now, but back then when I was growing up, yeah, it was not so good.
Chav, that's a good British term.
I call the females chavettes.
Mm, that's 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 something I kind of think about sometimes. Like, what if I personally had grown up in a different society? Like, how different would I be? Like, what if I had grown up in Japanese society and gone to Japanese high school? What
Might
kind of
have better work
personality
ethic.
would I? Maybe not. Maybe I would be more like easy to control. More
Yeah,
open
maybe.
to society's control. Maybe I'd be less
Possible.
rebellious. Maybe I would be more
Right.
willing to just like take on a job and work at a company, my whole life, like a lot of people do here. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I should probably do a little disclaimer. Anyone who's listening that hasn't heard the expression chav before, Oxford Dictionary kind of defines it as someone that's like coarse and rude, or like have the implication of being of low social status. Maybe that will help clear up what we're talking about.
Hmm. Yeah. I've watched a whole YouTube video about it. It was pretty fun to watch. There's like some people who really go into depth of what a chav actually is and how the term developed, the sort
Right.
of like the style and like the tracksuit and the
Well, they adopted
Burberry.
Burberry,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, they adopted the Burberry fashion label, basically the
Mm-hmm.
Burberry cap, most iconically, the sort of like baseball cap with the kind of like tartan tan design of the Burberry, and like kind of that was the look for the chav, and how you would easily distinguish them at a distance. They made themselves known in the wild.
It's a funny subculture, but um, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Kind of a chavvy neighborhood where you grew up. And did you go to an all boys school or?
No, no, I didn't go to an all boys school, but I did bounce around a lot. My mum and dad went through a very early divorce because my sister was in hospital with leukemia, and like the relationship kind of broke down after that. So I was
Mm,
kind of ping ponging between my mum and my dad, and I went to like say four different junior schools, for example. Um, I was a bit of a naughty boy as well because of like some shit going on in my life. I was also very anti-authority, which was kind of strange because I did really well in Marine cadets at a very young age. I was one of the youngest there. I think I was like 11, turning 12 when I first joined, and that taught me a lot about discipline. And I actually was very well behaved in the Royal Marine Cadets, and I actually did like some of the authority there. I just didn't see a more legitimate authority outside of that military organization, if that makes sense. So when I was in school
mm,
listening to a teacher, it was more of an individual basis. Like some teachers loved me because I got on well with them and I respected them, and other teachers hated me because I didn't respect them and I didn't respect their authority, the way that they were trying to leverage their authority over me. You know what I'm saying?
mm, mm, right. It's interesting.
And a
See,
lot.
yeah. Go
Go
ahead.
on. I was gonna say a lot of teachers like had this kind of like very lazy approach to teaching, where it's like if there's disruption in the class, they just want to deal with it. So a lot of the times I would have gotten sent out of the class for something I actually didn't do. It's just that I would usually be known for doing things. So when something went wrong, if there was no evidence, it'd be like, "Oh, Jay, leave the room. You're the one
Mm,
that's probably responsible, so you're the one that's going to go out." And like I'm the kind of guy where if I was responsible, I'll happily stand up and leave and not cause a fuss. But there was so many times where I got told to leave the room when I literally had nothing to do with it, and I
mm,
would I would protest to the point where I would not leave the room, and they'd have to move the entire class instead of me.
mm. So Marine cadets. I've never heard of that before. That's where you learn some
Royal Marine
discipline.
Cadets, Royal
Is
Navy,
is
yeah.
that like? Is that like Boy Scouts, or what kind of stuff do they
Oh
do
no,
with that?
it's not like Boy Scouts.
Hmm.
When you first join, it's mostly like physical training and parade. So you're like literally just learning how to march. So like you learn how to stand in formation, and you very quickly need discipline because you're standing there and your whole body is itching to move. I mean, literally itching to move. Where you have to put your hand up and be like, "Permission to itch, sir," because your leg is on fire because you've been standing still for an hour straight because they're just making you stand at attention for ages to make sure you just fucking get it. And then
Mm.
like you're marching in coordination with the others. They're going left, 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 right, left, one, top, three, four. So you learn how to march, and they teach you all like how to wheel left and wheel right properly. They teach you all that like parade ground stuff to kind of drill in that discipline into you. And then eventually the fun stuff's happening where like you like end up going off to camp, and you're like they drive you into like a fort in the middle of nowhere where it's like it's probably on a map, but it's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing nearby. Like the nearest village is like an hour's drive away at least, and like they've got an armory there with loads of guns in it, and they end up like letting you shoot and doing like paintball competitions where you're fighting against someone else, and and like blank round exercises where it's like a nighttime assault where you've got like actual uh basically you've got live guns, but instead of like live ammunition you've got blank rounds and like flashbangs to simulate grenades and stuff.
Hmm.
So we did like that kind of stuff as well, which is fucking crazy awesome for a kid. Like I was like, I think 12 and a half, 13, like getting to shoot real guns and like simulate nighttime raids and stuff with like flashbangs going off and like gunfire going off. It was fucking awesome.
It's like pre-military almost. Like you're just getting ready
Yeah,
for your job in the military. That's kind of crazy. So you did all that. You had a lot of fun, but you didn't ever think about joining the military.
I was actually. In fact, during the during the pandemic, I was in the process of becoming a warfare specialist for the Royal Navy as a submariner, and I actually passed all my exams. But because of COVID hitting when it did, disrupted everything. um, Pushed back my deadlines enough that I just barely went over the age threshold for that role. Like I was already like on the end of that spectrum of like this is the year I have to sign up, and
Hmm.
because of COVID, it got pushed back, and I wasn't able to sign up as a warfare specialist anymore.
Really? So were you in the military before that, or you just signed up
No,
as a warfare specialist?
no.
Oh.
I did, yeah, and I went through the examination process and passed all the exams pretty well and shit. And I was even the only guy in the exams that knew the difference between a ship and a boat, which I thought was hilarious for like a Royal Navy entrance exam.
Hmm. That is a bit silly, but um,
Yeah.
that's too bad. You were really gunning for that. What was your like dream role for that? What was it going to be your job if you
Well,
did that?
so if I was a warfare specialist, there'd be a few roles. I'd be the guy that manned the general purpose machine gun on top of the submarine when we're in port and stuff. Like, say we're in port and like there's potential hostiles, or like I've got to like just make sure everything's safe. I'd be the guy on top of the submarine with the machine gun.
So
That's one thing.
you'd be in the
That's one thing.
you'd be in the submarine with the
Yes.
submarine.
And yes. And the other role I'd be having is basically analyzing like the acoustic sonar of the vessel. So, say it's such a powerful vessel, the Astute class submarine, the hunter killer submarine that the British have. Like, even just while docked in Portsmouth Port, they can like passively hear the sound of a ship leaving New York Harbor.
mm,
Like from that far away, without the use of any buoys to like ping off sonars and stuff, nothing. Just pure acoustic attenuation of just listening.
right.
And they can, and I'd basically looking at sound profiles of ships and being like, oh, I know that ship has a weird propeller and it makes this kind of weird, this weird like sound profile. So I could identify the ships based on their like unique characteristics and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I see. I see. So
And you, yeah.
working in a submarine, that's pretty scary. Are you not claustrophobic at all?
I mean, I spent a lot of my life in claustrophobic environments. I'm a tall guy, but nowadays it's not as big a deal to be over 6 foot and working on a sub. They're a little bit bigger now, and
Mm.
I mean, I'd still wouldn't be it wouldn't be optimal still, but yeah, that'd be crazy fun for me. I'd be going to places where then literally not even on a world map. I'd be like docking at places which aren't even on the world map, and like no one else even knows this place exists. Like I'd
Mm.
be doing some really fun stuff in that role.
Right. But you'd be at at or you'd be in the submarine like multiple months at a time, right?
Yeah, so the longest deployment that they will disclose is 3 months. That's the longest time a submarine is usually deployed for, but it's not. It's
Mm,
probably a lot longer sometimes if they're doing something a little bit like off the record, so to speak. But yeah, the usual patrols are somewhere between 2 and 3 months. You'd be out, and you'd either be on a Vanguard class submarine, which is basically like just doing like nuclear patrols, where like you're on standby in case there's like a nuclear threat from Russia. You're the nuclear deterrent. So like, say if the Britain gets nuked, you can still launch your nukes from the ocean, kind of thing.
right.
Um, but there's also the other role, which I would be, which is the hunter killer submarine, the astute class submarine, which is not carrying nuclear weaponry. It's like, anti submarine kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be like I'd be like trailing behind a Russian submarine for months, and they wouldn't even know I was there, kind of thing.
Mm, right. Just tracking them and picking up their
Hmm.
movements, figuring out what they're up
Yeah,
to.
that kind of
Interesting.
thing.
Hmm. Well, that's like a totally different world. Did you hear about the submarine that went down and went deeper than any other submarine and then got crushed? Was it like
Are
a
you talking the submersible vehicle thing, or?
yeah, the submersible vehicle
Yeah,
that went.
yeah,
That was
yeah. I heard
gnarly.
about that.
I saw uh, what's it? The CGI rendition of
Do you know
what happened. It was like within a
what did
tenth
they
of a
show?
second. Within like
Yes, I was
yeah,
about to say how realistic was it? Because if it was realistic, it would be so quick you wouldn't even be able to tell it was happening. It would be faster than
yeah.
a split second. I mean, 1 minute the ship is okay, the boat is okay rather, and the
Mm-hmm.
next minute like, and you're gone. It'd be that quick. You wouldn't even be able to. Your body would not even be able to physically register how fast it's literally faster than your human reaction speed. Your
Yeah.
average reaction speed is between 150 and 250 milliseconds. It's faster than that.
Yeah, they were saying something like uh the pain, like for your brain to even register pain takes like 180 milliseconds or something,
Yeah, it's too
and
slow.
the ship collapsing was like 20 milliseconds.
Yeah,
Like
it's faster than a tenth of a second.
yeah,
It's a 20th. Sorry, it's I don't know how to phrase it, but yeah, it's like 0.02 or something. It's
right.
between like point 0.2 and point. It's crazy fast. You can't even register it.
No. So yeah, it just basically got shredded. So no pain, no no agony and death, but like just a whooshing sound. Maybe you might have
Hmm.
registered something
Do you
and
know they
you're
build
already dead.
submarines in sections? Like they build them like, say, I can't remember how long, but like, say, like 10-meter sections all like welded together.
Really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
and what's even more crazier is that the alloys that they use to weld those pieces together are actually quite special, because the submarine is actually the strongest at those welds.
Hmm.
The metallurgy that's I can't remember, if that's the correct way of saying that word,
M-
metallurgy,
Metallurgy,
meteorology. I
yeah.
can't remember. Yeah, but what the alloys that they're using are like so advanced and creative that it's actually strongest at those points, which you wouldn't think,
Hmm.
for a submarine at least.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, I bet there's the. I think that's one thing. Actually, we've talked so much about AI and Neuralink and stuff, like the software side of things,
Mm,
the of technology. I think that one area that hasn't really advanced much and is due for like a revolution is like the materials side of things. The metals that we've been using for so long. Carbon fiber is like a big thing that's come around. um there's been like Kevlar and stuff like that, but I think that
mm.
we're due for like a big breakthrough in um that side of things, in the materials science side of things.
Yeah.
That would be
Imagine soldiers of Neuralink.
soldiers with Neuralink. Yeah, maybe.
Imagine soldiers being able to interface with drone swarms with Neuralink. Like, you
Yeah,
got a drone operator on the ground who's like telekinetically interfacing with drone swarms.
right. Yeah, I imagine that would be pretty impressive. That would add a lot to their fighting strength. Did you hear Elon Musk talking about like what war is going to look like in the future? He was discussing like the sort of battlefield idea, like what is a battlefield actually going to look like in if we had
Nothing
like a
like he's
major world
probably
war.
gonna. Nothing like he's probably gonna describe. But tell me what he said.
He said that basically, Tanks are just like rolling death traps. They don't have any
No,
defense against drones, right?
only against conventional weaponry, and not against this future shit. Yeah.
That planes are not even going to be able to get off the ground because there's way too much anti-air missiles, and they're too, you know, they're too good at shooting things down. So there won't even be air superiority. There'll be no planes
Depends
at all.
how depends how sophisticated the electronic warfare is on the aircraft. Like if it's like really sophisticated, maybe they could like fuck with the targeting capabilities of the missiles enough that they would be able to remain in the air for extended time. But it's unlikely, depending on how sophisticated the anti-air missile system is.
Yeah, I don't know, but he was saying that it would be just blank sky, and then it would, so basically, uh that there would be a massive defender's advantage with landmines and drones and machine guns, and everybody would basically
Hmm.
be on foot. It'd be pure infantry with long range artillery,
Nah, it
and
wouldn't be
like,
pure infantry. I think the infantry would just be fodder. There'd be personnel on the ground still, but it would be way more minimalistic. I imagine there'd be way more heavy reliance on drones and what have you,
yeah, he's
autonomous
saying
things, autonomous drones and shit.
drones, infantry, and long range artillery. It's
Yeah,
basically World War
I think
One with drones.
I think he's right about that. I just think there'll be way less what he said, but way less infantry involved and way more cyber warfare and electronic warfare.
Mm.
Maybe my opinion.
Well, the infantry is the only thing that can move, right? I mean, if there's no tanks, then it has to be infantry. And
I mean, yeah, but
all the countries in the world have a abundance of infantry. They've got a lot of people.
well,
So
then it's gonna look like something in like the Terminator film where it's like these guys with like laser rifles just getting blasted by like machines.
yeah, but all those big like clunky machines from Terminator that are, flying in the air and walking on the ground, those things are gonna just get blasted by anti-air missiles.
But they won't be they won't be giant machines that are like encumbersome. There'll be these little tiny drones that just
Mm,
sneak up on you and drop a little bomb package on top of your squad and just like annihilate you
mm,
remotely.
yeah. So it'll be drones, infantry, and long range artillery. It sounds like a
I mean,
goddamn nightmare.
whoever's got the most sophisticated drone swarms will probably end up winning tactically because if your drones are sophisticated enough to take out their drones, then you have their superiority, and then you just dominate the ground infantry.
You know what it reminds me of is like when things were happening in World War II, when the battles were occurring in the ocean, where you've got these super high tech battle cruisers that are floating around, that have been like the dominant force in the ocean for hundreds of years,
Battleships
right?
as well, not just battle
Battleships,
cruisers. Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
the
aircraft carriers.
aircraft just absolutely dominate them. So aircraft carriers become like the thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It,
Mm-hmm.
and these massive, expensive naval armies or naval um, ships are just completely useless. I think that's what's kind of happening on the ground now with
Well,
drones
the battleships are
and
too
tanks.
large and too slow turning to actually like avoid being dove bomb or like torpedo bombed
Hmm.
by the aircraft carriers. Whereas like the smaller destroyer types are much more maneuverable, able to dodge that kind of stuff, while also still providing support to the aircraft carriers.
Hmm. But basically, during World War II, those ships, the big ships, just got completely destroyed, and they spent,
Yeah.
huge quantities of money to try and keep those things running, and they're
Well,
basically useless.
they tried to like turn them into hedgehogs in terms of like just strapping as much anti-aircraft guns to them as possible so they could
Hmm.
like shoot down the torpedo bombers as they were coming in low to drop the torpedoes and what have you. But the reality is like even if you gun down those pilots, the chances are they're still going to deliver their payload, and you can't afford to keep just losing battleships to a few planes like that.
Hmm. So the same thing's gonna happen on the ground as tanks just getting bombed by drones that cost almost nothing, and the drones
Yeah,
cost
you'll have a
pennies.
$5,000 drone, $5,000 drone max. That's like assuming like full military tech crazy shit on it, like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Probably even cheaper, able to take out a tank that's like worth millions, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Like a $10 million tank, just boom, easy.
Yeah. And that's what you just that's the war of attrition. You want to shoot down a helicopter that costs $10 million with a missile that costs 500K.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's gonna be weird, man, if that ever comes to pass. I hope it doesn't. I hope that things get contained over there, um, in the Ukraine and in that area. But now France is talking about going to war too. Like France is talking about sending troops into Ukraine.
Hmm.
Oh, it's so weird. Really makes
Who
me.
knows? Maybe Ukraine is just a test bed for this new style of warfare, and it's kind of weird how we have this like high quality footage of the war as well. Like we're seeing war like never before in terms of like the access, the level of access to the footage, if you know what I mean. Like we
Mhm.
saw a bit of that with Afghanistan, but a lot of it was fairly low quality footage and like
Mhm.
infrared cameras and shit and what have you. Whereas now we're getting this like higher resolution, gritty shit, and it's either going to like desensitize people to this shit or maybe hopefully wake up people to the realities of war. But I also feel like there's a lot of virtue signaling going on and like people not realizing that this has always been what's going on. It's just now you're seeing it.
Mm. Yeah. Eh. Well, I'm glad that you're not submarine commander or whatever, submarine sonar reader. That yeah.
Knock those exams out of the park as well. I think I would have had a
Mm.
good time. But maybe it wasn't my calling. Maybe the universe had different intentions for me.
Maybe would be strange if there was a war and you ended up being called up. You gotta go.
I might be one of the only ones left alive if like the country gets taken out. The submariners will be probably the only ones left.
Right. That
And they
might be
can
the
like
case.
operate for months with their supplies. Like they can yeah, they didn't have to surface for a long time.
Mhm. Man, that would be such a
They
trip.
won't actually tell you. They won't actually tell you how long they can stay operational for without surfacing this like classified information. But it's a long fucking time, guys.
Right. A lot of those are
They
powered
also
by
have
nuclear reactors too, so they're not.
they all do. They all do. The only ones that aren't are like the older Cold War era submarines, which
Mm.
still rely on diesel engines as well. But even those like are using the diesel engines more as a backup these days. But yeah, every single one of these submarines these days, the modern ones, especially the Astute class, has like a third of the submarine dedicated to like the nuclear reactor, which is like off limits to most personnel. And what goes on back there is like highly classified. Like you can get pretty much all the details on the Astute class submarine outside of the nuclear zone, so to speak, but inside there is like highly classified. One thing
Right.
really cool about the submarines is like there's this like ceramic tile outer layer where it's like these ceramic tiles on the outside of the submarine to kind of like dampen sonar pings and what have you to try and remain as like stealthy as possible. Like the amount of like ingenuity that goes into making this shit is crazy. And then after they make it, there's an officer that goes around the submarine and like says everything that's wrong with it. Like
Mm.
they're so analytical about anal about it. Like every little tiny detail, like he'll go over and nitpick everything about the submarine he's not happy about. Kind of like the guy that comes in to inspect and leaves like 50 different pieces of tape pointing out the defects or whatever.
Right.
Like he's doing that for the entire submarine. Like it's
Mhm.
crazy the level of detail that goes into this shit.
Right. Well, glad that we have people like that defending countries like good countries like Britain and countries like Japan. I'm sure that there's a high level of detail in all of their planning here as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's like a full fleet of subs or anything like that for Japan, but they're like ramping up really hard here right now.
Well, they're probably being encouraged to because what NATO want to do is put like a strangle on that strait in the China Sea to kind of like lock out China from any access to Taiwan and these other key locations for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Japan declared that any attack on Taiwan is attack on their like direct sovereignty. You know, like their ability to
Well, they're
defend
trying
themselves.
NATO.
Hmm.
Yeah, NATO's trying to draw a strong red line to prevent China crossing it. So
Yeah.
they're playing hardball with China to be like, don't tempt us. So hopefully that's their goal, is like basically to like try and deter China for long enough that they can get more control over the situation. But they don't have total control over the situation. Like they're like 10, 20 years out from being able to even like totally deny China from operating and doing that.
Well,
So China might bide its time for like 5, 10 years and then make a move. Who knows?
well, they need to deal with their internal problems first. China is a bag of just a mess, honestly. Just a communist country with so many different problems when it comes to leadership, and their military has been purged so many times. Like they've just gotten rid of the top leadership so many times over and over again.
Well, I think that's an issue of the imperial system in the sense of their leader is probably having an issue of like being able to trust his high leadership. So I imagine there's going to be a very strong turnover rate, and not many people in that guy's room is going to be telling them what they actually think. So there's going to be a bit of an issue of communication at the highest level in the Chinese authority.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're not like preparing particularly well for war either. Like I think it's 60% of their training as a member of the military in China is ideological training.
Mm,
So they're like rehearsing songs and like learning about communism and socialism with Chinese characteristics, Xi Jinping thought, that type of stuff. So
right.
a huge proportion of all military training is actually about loyalty, right? Which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
kind of crazy to think about. Whereas like how much time is spent with that type of thing in the American army, like maybe 0%, maybe 2%, maybe 1%. I don't know how much it is, but they're not like spending a lot of time like looking over the Constitution and stuff, and like that's on your own time. You know what I mean? When you're here and fighting for the military, like you're here getting ready to fight. That's it. That's what they're
Right.
there for. Yeah.
I don't know what Americans are told when they sign up for the military. I know that the Royal Marines are told something actually quite indoctrinating and religious. They actually are basically told, like, hang on a minute, guys, you're essentially warriors of God, and you're going to be killing in the name of, at the time, the Queen, and in the name of God. Essentially, you're like, they'll have that kind of propaganda where it's like you're warriors of God, and that's what they're going to tell the new recruits that are coming in.
Hmm. It's interesting. Is that what they told you in the cadet school as well?
No, but I have seen footage from Royal Marine Commandos, the young kids, like 18, I mean, like going into it and what the kind of things they're told in boot camp and blah, 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 blah.
Mm, it's a
I don't think we
powerful.
got much of that. I don't think we got much of that in cadets. We got a little bit of that, but not that extreme. Like that's like I think when push comes to shove and it's like actually time to be a Royal Marine, that's when they tell you that shit.
Powerful message for a young person. Anyone who's looking to fight and die, if you're fighting and dying for God.
Well, a Royal Marines ethos is first as a humanitarian first and a warrior second. So a lot of the things they're doing is actually humanitarian aid, like, bringing food to people that are in a really fucking bad situation and doing it with a fucking shit-eating grin on their face. That's the whole point. Like, you're not only like doing this crazy hard stuff, but you're doing it with a smile on your face to uplift the people around you, not only your own soldiers, but the people you're helping.
Mm, it's a nice
It's one
ethos.
thing it's one thing they're looking for in training. They're looking for people that are like going through that hard, crazy bullshit, but with a smile on their face. That's what they're gonna be looking for.
Hmm. Interesting.
It's kind of like that anti-fragility thing we were talking about. Like if you're like Sisyphus, but you start to enjoy the process and can smile while pushing that boulder up the mountain, like you're born and bred to be a Royal Marine. It's a state of mind.
Mm.
Do you want to go? Do you want to circle back round to what we were talking about earlier, and like about ourselves, and do a little bit more background digging?
Sure.
So I'm a bit curious about you as well. Like, I mean, I know you a little bit, but even though we cast together and we chill together and we talk together for as long as we have, I mean, I still could never know you. I don't think about actually diving into you more.
What do you want to know, Shun?
Well, first I want to ask, like, what turned you on to StarCraft initially? Like, how old were you? Why did you get so interested in it? What about that? First of all, I want to tackle this subject with you.
Well, I started out with Age of Empires 2, and a friend of mine at elementary school, he introduced me to StarCraft, and he burned a copy for me. Like I got a
Hmm.
burned copy of Age of Empires, and I just liked it. I just enjoyed the space opera, the idea of it, the campaign, the story, everything just kind of resonated with me. So I liked it a lot. I liked the campaign, or the editor was amazing for the time, right? The amount of
Yeah.
use map settings, games that you could get into on BattleNet was
Oh yeah.
mind-boggling. So I had a lot of fun with that, and I played a huge amount of StarCraft growing up. Um,
Yeah, me too.
just in terms of just like use map settings, just fun games, messing around, playing
So
team games.
how long was it until you actually started playing, like, as they used to call it, low money maps, like, the actual like 1v1 melee version of the game?
I didn't really play much as a kid, and then when StarCraft 2 came out, I started playing a bunch of StarCraft 2. I played until Wings of Liberty was over. I played like a little bit of HOTS, Heart of the
What did
Swarm,
you
and
play
then
race wise?
I played Zerg,
Okay.
and I had some fun with that. I had some success, like I got to masters and stuff, but
Nice.
it was not what I didn't really enjoy it that much because of the constant changing landscape. Like I was just always trying to catch up with what was changing in the meta because of the changes that were happening in the
Yeah.
in the constant balancing of the
The
game. So
aggressive balance updates.
yeah, so I got kind of tired of it, and moved on to other things. But I always watched StarCraft throughout all of that time. I always watched the pros
Mm.
players, and when I was very young, I had like an iPod Touch that I got GOM TV. They're like their old app on there, and I would watch that at
Nice.
night. Try to catch like the live feeds. I would watch like the first hour or whatever, and go to sleep because I couldn't stay up any later. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was always watching, and then when Remastered was announced, I started playing a little bit of 1v1 and just messing around. And when Remastered came out, I played quite a bit more, just practicing and learning, and then uh, but not super serious. And then yeah, I
Mm.
started casting, and I didn't really play at all when I was casting until very recently. When I started streaming, started actually taking it seriously and trying to learn and
Right.
get better. But yeah, that's my relationship with StarCraft in a nutshell, I guess.
And what impact would you say that not just StarCraft, but gaming in general has had on you in terms of how it shaped you, the benefits, the negatives? How has it impacted your life?
I think it's had like some positives and negatives. Some of the negatives
Like
have
what?
been like, um, for example, in college, when I was at college, I
Hmm.
played I played a lot of League of Legends, and I wasted a lot of time. I didn't really interface a lot with other people. I just like did my classes, you know, got my
Right.
grades, and I just didn't like do a lot of activities because I was busy all the time playing
Hmm.
playing League. Um, what a waste of time, man! What an absolute waste of time. So, those are some of the negatives. Is that you can end up wasting a lot of your free time when you should be out there, like really interfacing with other people and building connections with other people in a place like college. That's really what it's all about. And what I didn't
Mm.
realize was like getting the degree was not really even necessary or really important. It's all about like meeting the people, right?
Networking and stuff.
Networking and stuff. Yeah. So I didn't really do very well with that. That's one of the big negatives. The positive is that I always have something to do that is inexpensive. So I was always very good at saving my money, and I always had money to spend on other things because I wasn't going out and doing spending a lot on other things, unnecessary things. I was just hanging out,
Right.
doing my own thing, playing some games, and then I would always have savings that I could do the fun things that I really want to do, like traveling around.
Hmm.
So it is like a really great money saving tool, but I think that it can be a massive distraction from the things that are really important.
I think I've had a similar experience where it's like helped promote a sense of minimalism, of not
Hmm.
needing a lot, but also, yeah, like a big time sink as well, and hard to balance that sort of like play in life dynamic, and can be easy to be absorbed into those digital realms too deeply.
Yeah, absolutely. It really sometimes like some points in my life I've been so addicted like really couldn't get anything done, but I've found somewhat of a balance. I'm still working on it, but yeah, there's a real difficulty there. I can imagine for young people growing up now who are so immersed. Um, it's got to be hard. It's got to be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said earlier about like it being difficult to navigate childhood as like high school as like in 2024. And I do agree with you. There's a lot of like difficulties there for kids, especially girls. I think maybe girls get it the worst, especially young girls, because of the social media thing of like the social shaming of it all, where it's
Hmm.
like not only can the girls be mean to you on the playground, but they can like socially shame you like to the world and like put you on blast. And there's like maybe a lot more social pressure going on in the younger generations as a result of that social media access.
Well, yeah, there's some wild theories about how the whole like massive move towards transgenderism is as a result of all of that social media pressure, online pressure, and that victim mentality, the victimhood like um ideology that's kind of permeated through a younger culture. It's it's scary the sort of influence that social media can have on a young person.
Yeah, I think like back in our time, it was like 4chan was like the place where these kinds of crazy ideas would manifest. And if you had access to it, maybe you'd be subject to some of that kind of like trolly way of like culturally hacking you into like, there was even like a big movement on 4chan where they were like trying to convince people to become femboys and what have you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like there was like a big like psychological campaign to like actually convince people to transition and this but now it's the access to these kind of movements is so far reaching that it's easy to be swept up in certain toxic communities that maybe don't have your best interest at heart and might convince you to do something that maybe you isn't actually in your best interest but can be so compelling to you given your current life situation, and this group that seems so accepting of you can actually lead you down a path that maybe later on isn't kind of where you want to go.
Dude, I saw just a hilarious meme a couple of days ago. Maybe it was yesterday,
Mm.
where
So what?
there was like a boomer, and the boomer says, "I can't believe that I wore bell bottoms." And then there was like a millennial, um, no,
Gen
millennial,
X,
Gen
Gen Z,
X.
Gen Z.
What's after
How
boomers?
young? uh
Anyway, the different ones were like, I can't believe that I wore um parachute pants, and I can't believe that I wore skinny jeans. And
oh
then it
yeah.
says like Gen Z, and it's like I can't believe I cut my dick off.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Was really, really funny. Uh,
I mean, that's the interesting how fast times change. Like, I think Ricky Gervais made a joke that was perceived very transphobic about this, where he talked about how, like, I don't know, like 10 years ago, like saying something like women don't have penises, like no one would have a problem with that online.
mm,
But nowadays, that's the kind of thing that gets you cancelled, type
right.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a victimizer. You're a victimizer now. The bar has been
Yeah.
lowered so far, and that's what keeps
Mm,
happening. Like if you just look at it from a communist point of view, like if you are like in China, for example, when the communist revolution happened, you were either a red family or a black family. So if you were a red family, then you were one of the good people, like you were a worker. You know what I mean? If you're a black family, then you're an oppressor. So you can imagine, like at first, the people like the aristocracy is all black families, right?
mhm.
And like massive like oligarchs and stuff like that would be black families, and they need to be destroyed. They need to be dismantled and punished, right? But it keeps going down, like they keep lowering the bar and finding new victims, like, or new oppressors to victimize, right? So eventually it's not just those people. It's like a farmer who has a little bit of land, who's got like a cow, and he's like kind of respected in the village. Like he's a black family, and all of his family members and his children all need to be destroyed. And like a teacher at the local school who teaches math, like he needs to be destroyed because he's an oppressor, and then like the
Right.
guy who has glasses, he can read, so he's an oppressor. Like it just keeps, like, the bar just keeps on going down until
Yeah,
basically
this
everybody is destroyed,
Well, this is the problem with we saw this in the woke movement in the West with like calling people Nazis or fascists. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, define Nazi, define fascist, because if you're saying it's okay to punch a Nazi or it's okay to punch a fascist, but then you're like moving the goalposts on the definitions of these words,
Mm,
eventually like anyone could be a Nazi, anyone could be a fascist, and it's
exactly.
okay to physically attack them. Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah, that's the problem, exactly. It's the bar just keeps moving, and the the justifications, um they keep getting more and more ridiculous. But pretty soon, it's one of those things, like, they say, uh they came after those people and I said nothing, and then they came after me and no one was there to say anything for me, you know what I mean? Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the irony of those movements is usually the people that will be next on the chopping block are the people that are screeching the loudest,
Yeah,
if you know what I'm talking about.
the people who are the most outraged, and like,
They're usually very privileged themselves relative to their belief structure, which is maybe why they're overcompensating so much because they know that within that belief structure, they're next in line to be chopped. So they like
mhm,
want to be seen to be very pro that movement so they don't get the eyes on them kind of thing.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, they're like obfuscating a little bit. They're trying to, anyway. They're trying to, like, um subjugate themselves to the cause such that people aren't
Well,
going
they're
to look
martyring
into them.
themselves that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way it's like, oh, you're one of us. Don't worry about you. Yeah, sure, you're white, sure, but yeah, you're okay because you're about it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
They're thinking like that.
yeah. It's not good for society, but it's um it's crazy to see it kind of play out all over the West when we're supposedly so anti-communist, but these communist ideas have reached in so deeply
Oh
to
yeah,
people's
we're being
psychology.
trolled. We're basically being trolled. Like there's like troll farms dedicated to like stir the pot. You know what I mean? Like Russia and China and what have you. Like there's literally like dedicated state-funded troll farms poking the bear, creating fake news and all sorts just to really stir them up as well. Like it's actually kind of insane how blind they are to how manipulated they are. Sorry, how manipulated they are being. They're both manipulative in terms of how they're trying to propagate their own movement, but they're also being manipulated at the same time. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? That they're acting through the lens of the puppet masters, like being the progressives and setting the tone and the pace for the rest of humanity to follow and fall in line, whilst at the same time as being puppets themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, it's strange. It's very strange. Calling for government action on issues that the government has no reason to be involved in, wanting the government to be more involved than ever in all these like very personal aspects of people's lives, and not even thinking about the
Yeah.
consequences of those things at all, like not thinking that, someone unfavorable to them could be elected and
Mm,
now they've got control over these intimate details of your life, you know? This type of
right.
weird, like thoughtless, um, m- just strange virtue signaling positions that you're not even considering how that might play out. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
very
but
awkward and strange.
to be fair, though, the majority of those communities are actually pretty decent people. It's just that you only hear about the vocal minority, right? Like
Mm,
a lot of them are just getting on with their lives and don't make it their entire identity and don't beat the war drum on social media so much, and like,
right,
or at least have enough going on in their lives that they don't need to do that so much.
but they won't argue with those people who are beating the
No,
war
they
drum
won't. That's
because
because of how vindictive they are to their own kind as well.
yeah, if they step out of line, they know how rough they're gonna get it, right? So they just
If anything, they get worse. Yeah.
yeah. So it fosters this culture of like just following along. Those all these people who have good intentions are just following along, and those really radical people just don't have any leash. You know what I mean? They just keep getting farther and farther out there,
And
and
there's no
people,
pleasing them
yeah.
because you might tick like most of the boxes. Like you might be like gay, vegan, like a racial minority where you live or something, and you might tick a lot of the boxes for them. But like, there's one box you don't tick, and they're like, "Oh, fuck off, you Nazi!" Like it gets
Mm-hmm.
that silly. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing here? Like, where's the humanity in this? Like, they are being tyrannical and like anti-human whilst at the same time doing it under the guise of like equality. It's like maddening. Like they're literally saying that humans aren't equal while at the same time saying that we need to like promote equality. It's like
Right.
literally clown world type shit.
Yeah. No, it's 1984 type shit. Like the type of what do they call it? Like newspeak. You know what I mean? The newspeak uh of like freedom is slavery, uh that type of thing where they take two opposing words and equate them so that they are both meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't even know what the word means anymore so that they
Well,
can
they
control the
can't
meaning
even
of it.
define the words that they use.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to be um, inflammatory, but go ask some of those woke people to define what a woman is, and watch them just stammer because they're so scared of saying the wrong thing,
Mm,
and they know they haven't thought about it enough to actually have much of a good answer, and they'll do very circular logic of like defining the word with itself, like they'll say like a woman is someone that identifies as a woman. That's using itself to prove itself. That's not how you define words. You know what I mean?
mhm. Yeah.
They haven't even thought their own belief structure. They're just literally parroting what the narrative is. They haven't even done any kind of introspection on what that even means.
Well, anyone out there who's like interested in this topic, you need to read 1984. I think it's like basic
George Orwell,
basic
literature.
required reading for this day and
Yeah.
age to understand what's actually happening with this.
I think it is, but I think it's starting to go it will increasingly be more and more dated. I actually think that I actually think it'll get a lot worse than his those predictions in that one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that in the next like decade,
Uh-huh.
that's going to be like really out of date in terms of what's going on in the world, which is scary to think about.
I just mean in terms of like
Oh
the
yeah.
way that he was talking about language, language being
Hmm.
manipulated in order to
For sure.
manipulate the masses.
Well, you can if you control language, language literally controls the way you think.
Mhm.
And I know that maybe people haven't actually thought about this much, but let's just think about that for a second. So, if you only speak one language, for example, you're limited to the vocabulary that you've been exposed to express yourself both introspectively and outwardly to the world. And if you notice when you do try and speak, it sometimes is much more difficult to articulate with words what you're trying to express, right? Like you've got this conceptual thought in your mind, but actually turning that into words on paper or in speech is actually quite challenging for humans, right? Now, language is another level of barrier and an interface you have to overcome because you can only express yourself through the use of those words. So if you further water down language by manipulating definitions and controlling how people speak, you're essentially controlling how they think. Because if you're controlling how they speak, you're also controlling how they think.
And that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to control how people think for their own ends. It's wacky. It's a wild world. I don't know how we got to this from my your,
Talking
your
about
question about
StarCraft and you.
StarCraft. Yeah.
Well, why don't you? We can circle back if you want. You can hit me with some questions, and we can bounce back and forth. I don't mind like going off topic a little bit because it's kind of fun too. We can circle back around to some questions, and you shoot me some, I'll shoot you some.
Sure, but let me
What
just
do you
take a
want?
quick bathroom break here.
All right, sounds good.
So let's keep going, shall we?
Yeah, hit me with some hard questions.
Let's see. You were planning on becoming a marine, doing submarine work. What's the
Well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I when I was very young, I did want to originally become a Royal Marine Commando, but it
Mhm.
later shifted to wanting to be a submariner. So, a submariner wouldn't have been a Marine; like a submariner would just be in the Royal Navy.
So you must have had some jobs over the years. What's the worst job that you've ever had?
Uh, worst? It's hard to say. Maybe working the hotel, working at like a franchised hotel, cleaning rooms and stuff. I did some other extracurricular stuff of like say like sweeping the car park or something, but mostly it was just like cleaning rooms, like changing the beds and what have you. This is when I was like in college, earning a bit of extra money. That was hard graft, man. I'd had podcasts on listening to like Richard Feynman or someone like talking about physics or something to kind of pass the time, but that was really hard graft. Also, one thing that really got me through that was audiobooks like Spike Milligan's Hitler's Downfall. Really, really funny. Read by Spike Milligan as well. Really, really funny. Got me through those hard times. Yeah, cleaning rooms is not easy, man. Like you got to both be quick and very efficient and be very diligent of like cleaning all the bathrooms and making sure all the beds are made nice. That's hard graft, man.
Yeah, I agree. Cleaning is tough, tough work. I've only done like Airbnbs for cleaning, and it is a lot of hard graft for sure. Um, so that's your worst job, hey? You haven't had any like really bad situations with the workmates and stuff like that. That's good.
War off the duck's back though. If I have any issues with workmates and stuff, it's whatever to me. I don't really like drama. So if there's like a problem at work, I'll just like roll with the punches. I mean, they can say and do whatever they want. It's not going to really change what I do much.
Right. So you've lived in the UK your whole life.
Yeah. I mean, I've like temporarily stayed abroad. Like I was in Arizona for like 3 months, for example. But yeah, pretty much always been here.
Oh, what were you doing in Arizona?
Visiting a lady, staying with a lady for 3 months in her house with her.
Oh yeah, someone you met online.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. How'd you like Arizona? Was it good spot?
Hot.
Hot? Too hot for you?
It was like you could fry an egg on the pavement, even though it was like winter time. It was like crazy. But at nighttime, because it's a desert, super peaceful and really nice, cool breeze. And I used to just like do some like Wing Chun exercises out on the balcony, just looking at the mountain range as far as the eye could see. It was pretty beautiful in that regard. But during the day, like hot as balls.
So you decided to head back home after
I
a
mean, I was
short
only
time?
gonna stay. I
three
was only gonna
months.
stay for 3 months anyway. That was like my plan. I like went like at
Gotcha.
the start of like Thanksgiving, stayed through Christmas, um, up until like my birthday kind of time, and then head back.
Gotcha. So you've been on a few adventures in your life. You got any adventure stories?
I've got all kinds of craziness, but it depends on like where you want to go. Like some of my most interesting stories are like from like say being in the UK, but like being in a very precarious situation due to like operating on the streets because I'm homeless or something. You know what I'm saying? Like some of my interesting journeys have come from not necessarily leaving the country.
What led you to be homeless?
The pandemic and stuff transpiring that was kind of out of my control, and drama involving like a shared accommodation type situation. And there was like a guy in there that was like a drug dealer that was like a I'm the king of the castle type. I mean, to the point where he would literally be in your room, like telling you he's the king kind of attitude, like literally using those words, right? And I was older than him and not the kind of person you say that to. So there was a lot of tension in the household. So then, because I wasn't like falling in line and acting like this guy was the king of the castle, my food started getting stolen out of the freezer, and not in like a subtle way. I mean, like they'd like take like a pizza, eat the pizza, but then put the box of the pizza back in the freezer to like show you the empty box of pizza. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm,
back when I was like struggling to feed myself, so I was going like a week without eating sometimes because I'd use my last money to like buy like a week's worth of shopping before I get paid again, and they would steal my last food, and I'd go days without eating because of these motherfuckers. And it got to a point where I just had a fuck enough. And like he was a drug dealer and like had connections but wasn't like super powerful himself, but I basically had the attitude of like, mate, I don't care, like send them, like send people to come harass me, I do not give a shit. And because I had that attitude with him, like when something happened to him, he blamed me. Like someone ended up like kicking his door in and like stealing a bunch of his shit. I actually know who did it, but because I'm not a grass, I obviously didn't say who did it. I just was like, it wasn't me, fuck you kind of thing. And because of that, because I had that attitude of like fuck you, they just believed I did do it. So there was a court date and I had to go through like Crown Court and do all this other kind of bullshit. But because of COVID, that all got pushed back and delayed. So basically everything went to shit. So they were like, okay, well, we'll put you in temporary accommodation, we'll put you in this hotel, and we'll try and sort this out, and we'll get a court date sorted out, blah blah blah, blah. So I'm like, okay. So I'm going through like a mental health crisis at this point because my girlfriend's just like killed herself recently, and all kinds of crazy stuff going on in my life at the time. So I was not in a good place mentally anyway. And then they put me into a hotel temporarily, and then the hotel has to close because of COVID. And I
mm,
basically slipped through the net because like they put me in temporary accommodation at this hotel, and then the hotel, like literally a day later of them moving me to this hotel for temporary accommodation so they could figure out what the fuck to do, the hotel closed down. I was literally just on the streets.
wow. That's a
Yeah.
perfect storm of things happening, eh?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
It is what it is. It's made me a stronger person, but yeah.
what was your first night on the street like?
Uh, like nothing to me because everything that had been happening to me up until that point was a nightmare. So that was at the time was like waters off a duck's back. I was happy just to like kind of stroll the streets and like not give a shit because I was in such a bad place that like this was easy to me. Like wandering the streets, and the only thing that was a worry was like where to shit. So you could be like patrolling the streets and being cold and stuff. And yeah, it's not nice to be cold, but what's really not nice is being like, holy shit, is the public toilets closed? Like, do I have to walk half an hour to get to a toilet? Like, you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like, those are the considerations you start worrying about. And that's not nice. That was the thing that was the most daunting. I actually didn't mind like dealing with violent people and like dealing with like the bullshit on the streets that you face. Sometimes even life threatening situations. Like, I've been in a situation where I was like in a tent temporarily, and like there was people like going by and you can hear them say, oh, we'll come back later and do him, meaning like they're going to come back later on at night when there's not so many people around and come and like rob me and like fuck me up.
so did you ever get robbed when you were on the street?
No, I had many fights and many people attacked me and never once got robbed.
Hmm. So what's a crazy story of a fight or a wacky situation when you were on the street?
uh, well, I've been able to make most people back off from me because like I guess I don't necessarily appear outwardly aggressive. Um, I got nicknamed the Iceman by a few people that were operating in the area that were kind of like low-level gangsters, I guess, to put it in layman's terms. And but only because of how I dealt with them, because every time I had some kind of front situation with them where I had to stand my ground, I was very like stoic about it, but also very like in their faces once they got in my face. There was a time where like there was this girl that was getting bullied outside of a hotel where like all the homeless people and gangsters were staying, because like they put all the homeless people into hotels at this point. This was like after I'd already been homeless for like a few months. Um, they tried to help the homeless situation because everyone's on the streets in the pandemic. They just put everyone in hotels. But outside the hotel, there was like this big disturbance because they were basically like fucking with this girl really badly. And I just basically like said to them like stop fucking with her kind of thing. And as soon as like I made any kind of like inclination of them not to fuck with her, they were all up in my business, like all of them. And there was like 4 or 5 of them. There was only 2 of them that were like really outwardly aggressive. And what they tried to do was, while one of them was getting in my face, the other one like tried to jump behind me off to the side, and he like lurched up into my face to kind of try and like scare me, like we'll fucking kill you kind of thing. But because I had the attitude of like I didn't even flinch, I just kind of like got down into stance and like kind of like squared up to them both. They both like backed away immediately. Because I had that initial impression with them, they didn't fuck with me too much. But I think like if I showed them like any fucking kind of fear, they would have fucked with me way more. They were just like trying to like probe me for weakness at that point. So those situations, I didn't get any like kind of fights, but there were situations where I, even when I arrived to that hotel, it was so crazy that like the bouncers were having an altercation with he was either Russian or Polish, and he was really drunk and a really fucking big guy, like I don't know, like 250 pounds, but like not fat, like actually solid. And these bouncers were kind of like looking at him like not too happy about how aggressive he was being, and he was being very violent with them. And I just arrived at the hotel, and because I had this like not give a fuck attitude, I just like started like speaking to him in like Russian or something to like try and get his attention, like "Привет, Komlo," like just to wind him up a little bit and get his attention. Because the bouncers were kind of like circling around him a little bit and approaching him slowly, but because he was like really screwing up to them, they were kind of a bit nervous to like come too close to him. So I got his attention, and then like I couldn't really vibe with him. Like he was kind of like saying fuck off kind of thing. And eventually I got his attention by being like Polski, like trying to ask him like, are you Polish? What are you like just yeah, trying to engage with him a little bit to distract him. And eventually he looked at me and went Polski, and he put his middle finger up to me. So I kind of got his attention a bit. And then after I engaged him a little bit more, he turned his aggression all of a sudden all on me and just like approached me and just like hammered me in the chin with like a fucking powerful hook. But because he was now distracted and focused on me, the bouncers like came around and grabbed him and put him on the floor and blah blah blah. And yeah, so I got into like all these kinds of weird like confrontations and scuffles, but probably didn't really experience anything like too crazy, like considering the kind of like toxic environment I was in. I think I actually kind of got off lightly, but only because I had that like not give a fuck mentality, because nothing that they were throwing at me was anything compared to the shit I'd recently been going through.
So did you find that a lot of people were in the same situation as you, or was it mostly people who were like street people around you? And then,
Mostly street people around me. Yeah,
mm,
I was like kind of the exception to the rule at the time. A lot of them were like already like either addicts or gangster, low level gangsters, or yeah, there was only like 1 or 2 people that maybe seemed like they were in slightly similar positions to me, but even those were, even they were like not so much. They were like more like just more sophisticated people that were taking advantage of the situation. Like a lot of them were like middlemen gangsters, which actually had kind of some connections and were using that as a hub to do business because they had all these addicts and access to like easy customers, and also kind of go operate under the radar because they're getting like a free room and board to like chill and do whatever the fuck they want and operate out of.
right, right, that's rough. People taking advantage of the COVID situation. There's so many
Mm.
stories of that. So, but now you're here. You've uh computer, obviously. You've got your own apartment. How did it
Yeah.
turn around for you?
I mean, it was literally the cliche of like picking myself up by the bootstraps, which is theoretically impossible picking yourself up, by the way, but I somehow fucking did it. But like not through any easy feat. At the time I was doing all kinds of crazy shit. Like oh is that that expression like you should fear a man that has nothing to lose?
Hmm.
Like in that moment I felt like I had nothing to lose, and I truly have never felt more powerful in my life. Like genuinely not giving a shit opens the door for so much dangerous behavior that it's kind of frightening, like the kind of shit I'd be okay with being involved in.
Hmm. Well, you still had your freedom, right? Your freedom was something you could lose.
Yes, but in a way, no, because even when I was dealing with police, I had a very like not give a fuck attitude with them. Even like the way I talked to the police was very anti-authority. Um, Even when I was locked up in cells, which I was locked up in cells quite frequently, I still wouldn't be looking at it through the lens of like they got me. I'd be like meditating or doing press ups, or I'd be doing something in that cell to either have fun or pass the time or to develop myself. And I would always like see it as like kind of a game. And I just like had fun fucking with the police. That was because of my mindset at the time. So in a way, it was like a game to me to mess with the police if they did ever like arrest me for something.
So how did you get out of the situation?
Well, even while I was fucked up and doing drugs and stuff, I tried to reach out to my dad. Uh, I got hold of him and spoke to him, but I didn't like meet up with him or anything. But I eventually met up with my mum and stuff, and like got to talking to her. And even though I was still fucked up and living this crazy lifestyle, I still like was able to like kind of connect with her and stuff. And I think she felt really guilty about the whole situation as well, because of what had happened to me, because I'd like slipped through the net during COVID and all this crazy stuff happened to me all at once and blah 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 blah. So using her, I was able to kind of like realign myself, because even though I was in this fuck situation, I like kind of saw that this wasn't a great situation. So I was able to kind of like return to a slightly normal life because of like renewing that connection back to my mom, and then like trying to get rid of all the people in my life that were anything attached to that way of life in any way, shape, or form. So any kind of drug dealer or street level gangster or anything, even just old acquaintances and friends that were part of that world or new people in that world. I just went like cold turkey on everything related to it. And I spent like a year building myself back up, both psychologically and physically, because even though I was in like great shape because of like walking the streets constantly, my body still wasn't healthy necessarily, because I wasn't like getting good nutrition and what have you. I wasn't sleeping well and all this other good shit.
Hmm.
So it's
So
literally like me putting myself through rehabilitation, like forcing myself to go cold turkey on shit. Like I just stopped all drugs all at once. I quit smoking all at once. And I was like laying in bed, like twitching and like having restless legs and like not even being able to sleep and like fidgeting and like basically like having like cold turkey sweats and like detoxing myself over a few months and shit.
you did that while you were on the street?
No, I did that coming off the streets, like sofa surfing and shit.
So you had a friend that got you onto a couch to start.
Yeah.
So good who's this angel friend who saw you're kind of fucked up and like you're a drug addict and all that shit and
Oh, I
just
talk too
offered
much
you
about
a
other people, especially when I'm not sure about how much they want me to talk about. So I
sure,
won't
I
say too
mean,
much about specific people, but
you don't have to say
it's
their
suffice to
names.
say there was enough people that cared that I was able to put myself back together again a little bit, and my mum was a big part of that as well. Like, there's a lot of things that I could say negative about my mum, but honestly, like, yeah, when like push came to shove, like she helped lift me out of that just by being there and like giving me that connection to realign myself to friends and family that I needed more than the people I didn't. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
using that as an anchor helped like kind of realign my brain to being less fried.
So you got off the drugs and then you what, went and found a job, or you found some housing? How did you take steps forward?
Well, I actually couldn't do all those things because I was still in the process of trying to resolve all the court shit because of the pandemic. It took like years to resolve,
Mm,
so I was actually kind of like living under the thumb of like trying to resolve all this court shit as well while trying to rehabilitate myself.
right.
So I actually didn't progress as much as I'd wanted to because I'd still do all this other bullshit, and that closed the door on some avenues for me, like the Submariner thing. Opened some new doors though because it did encourage me to like go back to my roots, and like reached out to people I hadn't spoke to in years, and I went back to being a little bit of a gamer. I didn't go straight back into gaming. I kind of like did it more just as a hobby. You know what I mean? Like it took me a long time to actually using the PC as much as I used to, kind of thing.
Mm, baby steps, hey. So eventually
Yeah, it was.
you got your own place. You got a job, or how did you put things together that way?
Well, I got some assistance after going through what I went through.
Hmm.
I spoke to some people. I even was on like because of some of the crazy shit I went through. I even had like people ringing me up, like people that go through like trauma and like PTSD kind of shit. Like people like checking up on me and stuff. So I had like some mental health support and stuff, like helping me go through some of those transitionary periods, which was a big deal for me. Like even just like knowing like people out there, even if they were paid to care, there was still like some kind of like human connection going on to like get me started and to kind of help develop some sense of normalcy, even though what the fuck is normal. Um, and I was able to lift myself up through my passions and hobbies, kind of reignited circuits in my brain to help me start to kind of function in society a little bit more normally. But honestly, like I don't think I've ever functioned in society in a traditional sense, just because of like my own personal experiences have kind of shaped me into being what I am, and I don't want to fight that too much. If it's my authentic self, I'm going to be against the grain in terms of like how I've navigated the world against compared to someone else.
Right. So you managed to get into your own place. You've got this whole court thing still hanging over you. Is it over now? Did it resolve itself? Like, what was the outcome of
Yeah,
it?
it's completely resolved and nothing happened, but something could have happened if like things had not gone my way so much or whatever. Like, yeah, there was a chance I would end up in prison,
Mm,
and I could have ended up in prison on remand up until that was resolved. And that's the scary thought: is if they had taken me on remand, that would have mean I was in prison. I would have been in prison for like 2, 3 years before they even had that court date, and then be like, "Oh, you need to be here." So I kind of got lucky in the sense of I dodged being taken in on remand, and then I would have been stuck in prison for 2, 3 years just waiting to resolve this bullshit. So that's like a lucky thing. But the judge kind of at the initial hearing, not at the Crown Court, but at like the magistrates court, he kind of had the attitude of like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, why are you here? Like, he seemed pretty on my side initially, so I guess that's why he didn't take me on remand, because it's like the whole thing seemed a bit ridiculous to him as well. So
mm,
I don't think he wanted to take me on remand, which is why I didn't get on that. But I could have been in prison for like 2, 3 years just waiting to resolve this.
right. Right. So you kept seeing that drug dealer guy, the old roommate, in court over and over again. Is
No, he
his
didn't. He didn't show up in court, but his like parents did. You know what I mean? Like he was like too much of a chicken shit to actually show up.
that must have gone in your favor as well, hey?
Yeah,
I wonder what the parents are even thinking.
no, I don't care.
Hmm. Strange. Strange. Well, I'm glad it's all worked out. You're not in jail, you're not in prison. You've gotten yourself off the street. You've you found a reinvigorated love for your passions. That's awesome, man.
Mm. Thank you. I mean, it's been a journey and it's made me who I am. So I'm not gonna. I wouldn't want to change it for the world as well. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's given me that anti-fragility that I need.
Right.
After hearing that, my like, what kind of turmoils have you gone through in your life? I know you've had like a motorcycle accident, and you dealt with that quite stoically from what you described before, but I'm curious if there has been any other, like, not necessarily traumas, but like, break points in your life where like the rubber met the road and shit got real for you.
Nothing as crazy as what you've just described, of course, but I've had a few like turnaround moments, I guess. Some things that have like really changed my direction in my life. Um, as you know, I live in Japan, but I've also lived in China before this. I
Yeah.
moved to China after university, and I studied Chinese in university, as well as
Cantonese or
business
Mandarin?
Mandarin. And I moved to southern China, and with the intention of becoming fluent in Chinese and eventually working for a company, uh, you know, that does business between China and
Mm.
Canada. But I quickly realized how corrupt and dangerous it was to live in China and to be a part of that society and to be like involved in that country in any like deep respect will like deeply stain you as well as a person. Like if you want to do business, basically you have to play ball, right? You have to be willing to be like with that moral standard, right?
Right.
So I realized that that's not for me, and I needed to get out of there. So that was like a big turning point in my life where I had been working towards that as like a goal of mine for many years. It was like 5 7 years of study, constant
Right.
study, aiming for a certain goal, and then realizing that this is not what I want for my life. This is not my idea. This is not what I thought it was. I
It's
thought
not
this
the peak
is
you want to reach.
yeah, this is like not a land of opportunity. It's a land of degradation and corruption, and uh, this is not what I want for my life. So I had to change gears, and look outwards to something else, and I had to go on a bit of a soul searching journey. So I went all over Eastern, Southeastern Asia, a long backpacking journey with just a small, like, 15-liter backpack, something like that, on my back, just a few clothes, and you know, just kind of soul searching, looking around.
What
Um,
did you find?
I love travel, man. I really enjoyed it a lot. I had a great time. It wasn't it wasn't so much that I found like a new calling or anything like that. I just found that I am completely capable of living with almost nothing, and it was really freeing. Just a couple of clothes, couple of pairs of clothes, and um, the road, and some money in my bank account. I was completely fine, totally satisfied, really happy, enjoying my life.
Yeah.
It turned my idea of like what I wanted for the future um, on its head. Like, what do I actually need? I started thinking a lot more. I started reading a lot more. I started listening to a lot more audiobooks and realizing that like the secret to happiness is like wanting less and needing less, you know, and just
Hmm.
like that minimalist mentality came out of that time for me. So yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot on that travel, and I eventually from that experience realized like the importance of freedom, the importance of like never discount how important freedom is. Like that's why I asked you when you were talking about like I had nothing to lose, and my first response was like, well, you still had your freedom, right? Like the freedom is so valuable.
Right.
People don't think about it, especially not in the West, because it's kind of like a given, it's a guarantee. Freedom
I don't know though.
it's so valuable, man. If you
I
go to a country like China, you go to another
Yeah,
country,
yeah.
you realize like, oh, these people are not free. Like they don't have that the ability to do what they want or to say what they want, um, they're limited, you know, and being unlimited, being free is so valuable.
I also think that people in the West, though, very are quick to trade their freedoms for
Mm,
like security and comfort as well, though. And that, but because they take it for granted, though,
hmm
because they have it as a given, it's taken much more for granted and kind of like not really respected. Or I think people like operate through the lens of they value autonomy above all else. But when push comes to shove, like during the pandemic, like we were talking about, like they're more than happy to throw away those freedoms just for a little bit of comfort and a little bit of security blanket.
Yeah, yeah, that was a big a wake up call. Like, oh my gosh, people really don't value their freedom at all. They're really not even thinking about, like, they're willing to just let the government do whatever they want. You know, take all my information, track everybody. You know,
Yeah,
just to
all under the guise of like saving humanity and preventing a crisis or whatever. Like,
hmm just like your freedom is not worth dying for, you know what I mean? It's not worth like the risk of infecting other people or something like that, you know? That's
yeah,
what people were saying. And it's like, man, just a generation ago people were willing to literally die for
mm-hmm,
freedom. And now you're
mm-hmm,
here not even willing to take a 1% risk that you might get sick, you know, or die.
yeah, yeah.
And you're willing to throw away that freedom. It's unbelievable.
I'm sure there's a lot of older generations that would be turning in their grave at like how lackadaisy people are about their freedoms, considering people fought and died for those freedoms and
Mhm.
suffered crazy atrocities and saw their friends being blown apart to secure those freedoms.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. That sort of was like a seminal moment for me. That like change in mentality when I was in China and realizing like, oh shit, this is really important. Like freedom is so important. I need to live somewhere that's free. And in a lot of ways, Japan is a very controlled culture. Like there's a
Mm,
lot of kind of like limitations in terms of you know, what's acceptable in Japan, but
right.
at the same time, they don't track you. They don't. They have a lot of really strong privacy protection laws in Japan. They really don't get into people's business as much.
I wonder
Um,
if that's why there's such a voyeur kink in Japan.
I don't know, but there's just a deep respect for privacy. I think that is like very incongruent or is very like a parallel.
Mm,
It's in step with the ideas that a lot of other countries will ascribe, you know, but then the privacy
right.
is just not there. Like the UK, for example, has some of the most security cameras out of any country in the world, right? Like there's almost a security camera for every person, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, CCTV everywhere. So there's
Well,
uh,
the UK used to be the CCTV capital of the world, but that's changing a little bit.
mm, yeah, there's more than one CCTV camera for each person in China, right? Like there's multiple
Hmm.
for each person, and that's getting worse. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the Big Brother George Orwell type thing. But before we go too deep on this, I want to keep the subject on you a little bit. So
hmm
you've got a lovely, 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 lovely wife, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about her, but I just want to know how you two met and like what the situation was like coming together in your relationship.
Um, so I was in Japan during the pandemic, and the
Hmm.
pandemic when it hit, it didn't really hit that hard here in Japan. Like the uh, there was like that weird event with the cruise ship, if you guys remember. Some of you guys out there might remember
Yes,
the
I do
cruise
remember.
ship
I do remember.
that docked in Japan, and it was like a big thing because
Hmm.
there was like a lot of people on there with COVID, and
Yeah, and they were kind
so
of like locked down on the cruise ship.
Yeah, so they were wondering what to do about that, and because of the more tightly regulated government, like the government is not as it doesn't have as much authority to do like total sweeping lockdowns as it does in, for example, my country in Canada. They didn't like lock everything down, and they were very focused on like maintaining uh, the flow of society, which is something that like conservative governments are good at, right? Like they're not very willing to make like big changes, sweeping changes. Excuse me. They're not
Mm.
willing to make like really big sweeping changes really quickly and like alter society in a really fundamental way uh in reaction to some new event, right? So they were very like calm about it. They told everyone to mask, and then they were like, we're gonna close everything for 2 weeks, and then they closed everything for 2 weeks, and then they opened everything back up again, and it was basically back to business after those 2 weeks. So everything was still running, but people were, of course, not going out as much. They still had restaurants were still open and allowed. You were able to go, but bars were supposed to be closed at like 10 p.m. or something for a long time. So the the society still functioned. I still went to work. Everyone still went to work. It was
Yeah.
totally normal. Nobody just stayed home. Um, Everyone was back to work basically after 2 weeks, and the only thing was that the social aspect wasn't really there anymore. Like socially, it was became even harder to meet or talk to people.
Uh huh.
So everyone was. It's like well known. It's very like it's kind of stereotypical that people in Japan, they don't communicate well and they don't socialize much. But it became even worse during COVID, and
Hmm.
so I started doing some online dating, and my wife was living in a city like two about an hour away from me by train, and
Okay.
we ended up meeting online, and we started hanging out, going on hikes together and stuff. And then she moved to big city Nagoya, and which is a little bit nearer to me. And
Mm.
I finished out my 2 year contract with the school that I was working with, and I rented a van, put a bed inside of it, like a contraption in the back, so that it would be kind of like a camper. And I drove all over Japan. I took her with me for about a month, I think. No, not a month. Like 10, 15 days, something like that. We went together, and I traveled for like a month, a little bit over a month. And yeah, we had a really good time. And then we moved in together. I moved into her place in Nagoya while I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, whether I wanted to stay in Japan or go back. And we haven't split up since then. We've been together ever since.
Now, at some point, you move back to Canada with her then?
Yeah, yeah. We moved back to Canada, and we stayed a year at my parents' place. Um,
Mm.
just found jobs in my hometown and just worked, and saved up money so that we could do another travel experience. I had a dream that I really wanted to drive from uh, Canada to South America, and it was actually impossible because the ferry that goes from Peru to Colombia got canceled during COVID, so they don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So we wanted to go drive down through Mexico, maybe down into Central America, something like that, and we ended up saving up money for a year. Um, and we bought a vehicle and drove down through the U.S. And we ended up breaking down in California. The vehicle just totally crapped crapped out,
Oof.
and so we ended up uh, just going backpacking instead. It was a bit rough, but through it all, we had like a really good experience together. We never fought or had really hard times. Like we always relied on each other really well.
What's interesting about that is because the car broke down,
Mm,
you were like kind of forced to like hike and backpack together, like how
mm.
you met. You met through dating and hiking together. It's kind of interesting that you went full circle on that and ended up being forced to go back to how you met, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we were both just adaptable. We didn't freak out and like run home or anything. We're just like we're just gonna salvage the situation, find a way through.
Nice.
Try to enjoy the experience. And
Sailing with the tides rather than trying to row too much.
yeah, so we did a bunch of backpacking around, and then I got hit by a car. Unfortunately, got hit
Oof.
by a truck while riding a motorcycle. Just stopped at a red
Yeah.
light. Yeah, stopped at a red light. Somebody hit me from behind and just drove off, hit and run.
Damn.
Yeah, and then we came back to Japan after I started to feel better. After I got some rehabilitation. After that, we came back to Japan to hang out with Mio's grandfather before he passed. He was sick with cancer, so we spent some time with him, and now we're here. We're in Japan.
Who told you that Zen story?
Yeah, he was the one who talked who who brought up the Buddhist story of
Yeah.
the the man with the horse. So yeah, it's it's been a wild ride, man. It's been a wild adventure. Not quite as wild as your COVID story, but yeah.
No, they've been wild in our own respects. Like what you've done is in some respects cooler than what I went through. You know what I mean? Like it's all relative.
I think mine was more fun. That's for sure. Sounds like it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people in my position would have not been having a very good time, but yeah, I kind of rolled with the punches, so I can't complain too much.
That's
But
good,
yeah,
man. Yeah.
staying on topic. What do you think makes you, and if you're comfortable staying on topic with this particular subject, what do you think like makes you two like compatible? Like what is it about you two that you think just works?
It's a good question. Hmm. I think we're both just very chill. We don't we're not like vying or jockeying for position, We're not like
Mm,
trying to like bully each other, push each other around at all. Like we're
right.
both just kind of doing our thing and supporting each other. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what works so well, but it just works. We're just always hanging out, having a good time. We're not we're
Would
not.
you consider her your best friend as well as your partner?
Yeah, I don't have a huge amount of friends, man. I'm pretty
Mm.
limited in my friend circle right now. I'm in Japan. You're the person that I talk to the most out of
Oh,
anybody.
really?
Aside from her, of course. But
I would hope so.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
someone in the comments did recently ship us a little bit and say something about us, which made me laugh a little bit, thinking that people were going to ship us a little bit. If you know what I'm saying?
hmm, I mean, I kind of know what you're saying. Like they're saying like we're talking so much that we must be like dating or something like that.
Kind of, yeah. I'm a little bit worried that like if we get popular enough in like years to come, like we might get like some fan fiction made about us or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I always had this problem when I was younger would be that I would like vibe with a really close friend, and then people would start to talk shit about us, and then they would run away. Like this happened to me one time. Like, this is a really concrete example. Is
Mhm.
I was on a trip when I was in high school. I was really into rugby and played a lot of rugby. Um, I got invited to join a team that was like a team from another town. They were just looking for people to join them on this trip to go to South Africa to play rugby, and it was basically anyone who could afford to join the trip could basically join the team and come. So I,
Nice.
I got my parents to agree, and they paid for this trip. I went
You played
to
rugby.
yeah, I played rugby in South Africa, and
Holy shit.
yeah, it was a really good time. Really,
What
really.
position did you play?
I was in the scrum. I was like
What position?
prop, yeah, or second row.
Wait, what? Oh, second row.
Yeah,
I
either
was
one.
tight head prop.
Okay. So
You've been behind me then.
yeah, or prop. I played prop sometimes. I played second row sometimes. Like depends on
Mm, mm.
depends on the team or whatever. But the the story is that I had another guy from my school who I kind of got along with. His name was Tanner, and
Hair.
we we were kind of vibing like during practice and stuff. We were hanging out and talking and stuff, and everything was going pretty well. And if we had to room in a hotel during the trip, we would share the same room, right? Because we were
Right.
we were both on the same level. We were both cool with each other, and I thought of him as a pretty good friend. He seemed like a pretty cool guy, and I told him like we're going to Africa. Like, you watch my back, I'll watch your back. Like
Mm,
let's not get robbed. Let's not have anything bad happen, right? And
yeah.
so we were cool with that, and we were hanging out all the time. And then one time, I remember vividly that we were on the bus, and some people started making comments about him and I being too close together. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
got, what are you guys, gay or something? Like, what the hell is going on between you two? And he just like, nah, I'm not like that. And then he stopped hanging out with me, and started
Oh,
hanging out with other people, right? And
oof.
yeah, so that was really that type of shit happened to me a lot. I've always been the type of person who has a few really close friends. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not really like great at being a social
Right.
butterfly, hanging out with a whole bunch of different people. I mostly gravitate to just a few close people, and then I get like really close with those people, and I really get to know them very, very well. And
Sometimes that can be the
yeah,
best way, though.
yeah, I find it's the best way, but some people just they're not able to handle social pressure at all, and like that sort of like awkwardness just like completely repels other people.
you
Some
wouldn't
people, yeah.
you wouldn't have that issue with me saying I'd be ride or die, man. Like I'd have your back 100%.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I could tell.
Yeah, like say if I was in like even like Love Snow, who I'm not even that close to, and he started some bullshit, even if he was in the wrong, I'd try and explain to him why he was in the wrong, but I'd also defend him in the situation. You know what I'm saying? I'd
Mm.
also have his back even if he was in the wrong. Same with you. Like I'd have your back even if you were in the wrong.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's it's a beautiful thing, like a close friendship. Got to have a few of them in your life. I think that that's something that's going away for a lot of people too. Like, I've heard so many stories or so many like news articles and stuff saying that uh, men are not having as many friends, or not having any
Right.
friends. There's people that don't have any friends. Like, man, that's a sad state of existence when you don't have any friends.
Well, they're being their wants are being catered to because they're lonely, right? So they're
Mm.
getting parasocial connections through streaming and OnlyFans and what have you, and they're still getting kind of some sense of connection, but it's what they want, not what they need, right? So it's I don't want to go too deep into that subject. We're still talking about you, but yeah, we talked about that on our was it our incel podcast? We did talk a little bit about that.
Mm. Parasocial relationships and that type of thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
a little bit.
But okay, well, question then.
Mm.
So based on what everything you said, do you consider me a close friend then?
Yeah, I would consider you a close friend for sure.
Nice. I'd consider you a close friend too, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, we spent enough time chatting back and forth, get to know each other a little bit more through this podcast. It's nice.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, we've spent a lot of time in KCM without any like deeper conversation, but except for like maybe after some short conversations. But Yeah,
Well,
it's good.
maybe that's one thing we could talk about. Like,
Mm,
let's now that we've done a little bit of a dive on each other as individuals. Should we
sure.
try and talk about us as a duo a little bit? So, okay, so we met through a mutual acquaintance, Love Snow, right?
Hmm.
What let's talk about what our first impressions of each other, and like and so the listeners can know like how that actually came about, us ending up casting KCM together. Like how was that process from your perspective?
I honestly was thinking about this a couple of days ago. I was like, what did we do? What was the first thing that we did together? I couldn't even remember what was the first occurrence. Like it was some sort of just you and me, and I think Love Snow's stream, and
Yeah, that's
he
his
was
dream.
doing a stream, and then it was like maybe Ozzy might have been in there too,
Yeah, he
and we were
was.
all just talking shit, and Love Snow's super hammered. Um, we're all just making fun of him. I think you and I were going back and forth with some sort of joke that the other guys were like too embarrassed to go back and forth, but you and I just kept like going harder and harder, like
Yeah,
making
we
it
were
more and more
riffing. Yeah.
silly, yeah. And then I was like, yeah, this guy can hang. Maybe we can do a cast together sometime.
Nice, nice. So, what was your first impressions of me as a caster? I mean, like when we first started casting together, like what were the vibe you got from me at the time?
I can't remember what you were like the first few casts. I remember that we were having a bit of a hard time, like going back and forth and like bouncing off each other, but it kind of
Hmm.
corrected itself pretty quickly. Like we figured it out. Um,
Yeah.
it didn't take too long to like to make it work properly, but up until that point, I was casting with a whole bunch of different people. Like I had tried um quite a few people who would hit me up in Discord and said like, "Hey, I have this experience. Do you want to try casting together?" Um, and we never uh, quite had that like back and forth really down. It didn't feel like a conversation when we were
Right.
casting. It felt like two people like trying to do their own solo cast, like talking over each other, or it was me like giving room for the other person and like trying to give them space to cast, and then they weren't giving me the same, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So
Right. Right.
yeah, it was um definitely from the first KCM cast that we did together. I felt like there was like that mutual uh feeling of like giving room for each other, like you're giving me some space, I'm giving you some space, and like we're both riffing.
Well, yeah. To speak on that more, I want to ask. I do want to ask you specifically, like, what do you think our individual strengths and weaknesses are as casters, and why we work well together? But I first wanted to quickly touch upon how I feel like we always had that like natural chemistry from day one. It's just we needed to figure out like the technicalities a little bit. I would argue that I was probably a bit rusty as a caster then. I'd done casting in the past many years ago. In fact, I even did a bit of casting back in the Winamp days, like literally a podcast style cast where there's not even visuals. It's like a
Mm,
radio show for StarCraft where you're just being described what's happening. I mean, that level of cast, like that long ago.
mm,
So I always had a little bit of caster experience, but I did do StarCraft 2 casting for a sponsored team and I was on their main caster team. But I hated that dynamic. There was like three people casting, and one of them wasn't even a proper caster. He just managed the team but wanted to insert himself into every cast. And it got
mm,
to a point where he was dictating the cast, where it was like he was the main person talking, and he'd be like, Xun, what do you think about that? And that's the only time I got to talk was when he would turn to us and ask us a question or something. It was a really toxic work environment. I just dipped out of it and didn't want to cast for like years as a result.
mm,
But when I found CPL and you, that kind of re-sparked my passion for casting again. So I kind of like have you to thank in that regard because I was casting before you in terms of like doing CPL casts and what have
mhm,
you, but I wasn't super passionate about it like I am right now after like really getting involved with KCM again.
mm. Yeah, that's good to hear, man. That's good to hear. Yeah, I seen some very awkward casts before, and I've actually done what you're talking about, where at one point I was doing whatever Africa TV broadcast that I was doing, and just having it be a video like this where it's just my voice, and then having like a syncing guide, you know what I mean, where like we would uh the player or the person would have the game open on another tab and then have my voice in the background, and then there would be like a guide to sync up the video so that they could watch with my voice. It did okay, but it wasn't very successful, so I ended up quitting that style, just giving up on it. But um yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, like just having like a podcast version of a StarCraft cast. It's tough to make it popular though, man. It's really, really hard to get
Yeah,
people
I
to.
was doing gimmick. I was doing like funny little gimmicks where, like, when there was nothing happening at the start, I'd do like funny voices, or like I'd do the entire cast with an American accent and just see if I
Mm,
could fool people into not knowing I was actually British. I'd find some way of having fun with it, or do dumb things like going, "He's building a supply depot." I'll do some
mhm.
dumb shit to entertain them because all I've got is my voice. So I kind of like did some dumb shit to be entertaining. But yeah, I don't want to talk about me too much. Um, I want to know what you think about what makes us, what are our individual strengths and weaknesses as casters, and why we work well together. What do you
Mm.
think?
I think we work well together because we're just having fun. Like that's what people want to hear. Like they want to hear
Right.
two people who love the game having fun. Uh, just like a lot of people when they're watching, they might even understand the game way more than us, right? They might understand like what's happening on an even deeper level than we do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessary that we explain everything perfectly, or that we understand the game way better than they do, and they're actually going to learn something from us. It's more important that they're uh, getting the feeling of two people, enjoying the game. Do you know what I mean? It adds to their
Yeah.
enjoyment. So I think that we both just love the game, and we both um have like a passion for the game. We have like a real excitement, you know what I mean? And then the people who are
Mm-hmm.
listening can feel it. And when they feel it, then they enjoy the cast and they enjoy the game more.
I guess it's kind of like if you're like hanging out with your buddies, like watching a sports game together, like it's way more exciting if you're all jumping together and shouting together, and
Mhm.
having those casters being excited with you while you're watching it kind of hypes up the situation for you even more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think that's our biggest strength. I think we both have that like passion and like the excitability for the game, right? We love to see the crazy moments, and like
Hmm.
yeah, we're good
Yeah, I
at
think we're
we're both good at like shoutcasting. We're both good at analysis, breakdown, that type of stuff. I think we both
well.
pretty well rounded.
That's the thing, is that even though we have some distinctive styles, like you could argue that you're the calmer, reserved one, like
Mhm.
the more composed Artosis, and I'm the so-called hype man. But it's not actually true. We do like kind of switch our gears a lot and both do those roles. Like I'll sometimes do something analytical and chill, and you'll sometimes do something crazy and hype. It's just that we also have this like energy dynamic where I'm using you as like an anchor to like kind of like keep me down onto earth, so I can ping pong around and go on like crazy tangents and riff with like references and be really hyped for like 20 seconds and go crazy and let my brain go on hyperdrive. But then suddenly you're like this like calm, reserved energy that brings me right back down again, and I can like slip back into my analytical mindset even though I've just like gone crazy for a few seconds.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Um I'm glad I can be that for you.
You're my rock, Saiyan.
Yeah, I definitely feel that energy, like that things are starting to go off the rails, and I don't resist it. I just like control it and move it in the right direction.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we're a pretty good team, I think.
I think so.
It
Oh,
mhm.
what could we work on? Like, what's our biggest weakness? What do you think leaves some to be desired? You know what I mean?
Mm. Do you have any ideas on that? Let me think for a minute.
I'm thinking too. I mean, I could be like really nitpicky, but I'm trying to think of actually like something with meat to it. It's good that we're struggling to come up with stuff. We
Mm.
covered a lot of the potholes already over the year.
I think we could be more. We could add more jokes, more silliness to the cast too.
Yeah, it's weird though because I was kind of going in that direction, and then
Mm-hmm.
I kind of shifted out of those gears a little bit. Like I was doing way more like comical references and jokes in like say previous seasons, and I kind of dialed it back a little bit.
Mm.
And I think I dialed it back a little bit too much as well. I feel like I need to find that balance again between the two.
Yeah,
Speaking from
I
my
could
side of things.
I could probably turn it on a little bit more in terms of like joking around. It would be maybe it would be more like palatable if I was more more that way as well. If it's just you
Mm.
doing it all the time, then it maybe becomes like
Yeah, well,
tiresome. I don't know. But
maybe.
if we're more going back and forth, then it would be maybe better. Something I can work
Well,
on.
well, maybe you could play the role of instigator more and like stir the pot to get me going more. So it's
Mm.
like rather than me having to rev my own engine up, you're kind of like revving me up as well. Like you're like treating me like a wind up toy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just letting you go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe something to think about. I think we've hit a pretty good level already. Just
Yeah. Now
with
we're just
more
polishing, right?
with more time and more practice, we'll have better lines. Like things won't
Hmm.
be things will be so smooth. So like so easy to just to cast together that we'll have the ability to like do those extra things, you know what I mean, to like add on
Right.
those extra layers, maybe do like more preparation stuff, like think of jokes beforehand that we can throw at each other during the
Hmm.
cast, that type of thing.
Especially if we can like establish some like inside jokes with the community because we're doing that.
Right.
So like they feel like they're part of it more. Like we did some of those things, but like for example, I do the whole gorilla and ape references and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
that's like just one thing. We could do so much.
Sure.
Um, so we should probably have more like stock material to work with so that when in the moment we aren't like coming up with something creative based on that moment, we have these like other inside jokes we can pull out of the pocket and riff with more.
Mm-hmm. We're letting the people in too deep to our creative
Creative process.
process. People
I
watching
don't think
this.
so. I think this is cool. And Artosis and Tasteless did talk about some of their creative process in the past. I remember them saying that they went through a phase where like every cast they were like analyzing afterwards like what they could have done and what they could have done differently. We did a little bit of that, didn't we? Where it was like, especially in the early days, we were like being a little bit nitpicky with ourselves and trying to
Mm,
like catch ourselves out a little bit and try and iron out those creases more because we needed to, like back when we first started. I mean.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I think we did do some extra like analytical stuff, looking back over our cast and like discussing what we should do better.
Mm.
Yeah, like the I remember some serious conversations about talking over each other, cutting each other
Yeah.
off. Yeah, but that's something that came pretty quickly once we identified it and like really worked on it directly.
Well, I think we've always had respect for each other as casters, players, and humans. So it
Mm,
wasn't really easy. It wasn't really hard to iron those creases out. Like it wasn't like we got personally offended when we brought those issues up. We
no.
we were we were like men about it. We just told each other what was up and we dealt with it, right?
Teeing each other up.
Yeah, teeing each other up,
Teeing
getting
each
those T
other
levels are rising.
up. Yeah, it's so important in a cast to like tee each other up and have each other
Yeah.
like give clear breaks where it's like, okay, now it's your turn to talk, like right at that
Hmm.
moment, and the other person knows it, and they don't
And it's
have to
so
like wait for their turn to jump in.
and it and it's so easy to be greedy. Like I could like go on a tangent and there's like a fight about to happen. I could also take that play by play, or sometimes I could just tee you up and be like, over to you, Saiyan, have fun with that. You know what I mean? I'll just
Yeah.
like talk like crazy up until the moment of engagement, like bang, bounce the ball back to you, and you're like doing the play by play instantly,
Yeah,
or
for
vice
sure.
versa.
For sure. Absolutely.
What I really like is there's a lot of times where we're not only teeing each other up on the cues on when to come in, but like just in general, like I think that we do a pretty good job of like bouncing the ball between us. There's times where we're dribbling maybe a little bit too much on both levels, but there's a lot of times where the bounce back between us is actually like really fluid and like organic.
Yeah, I'm getting a good sense of like when your sentence is about to end. So I'm like really like right as you end what you're saying, I'm ready
Right.
to keep going. And so there's like very small gaps between what each of us are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how people probably take that for granted, but it's actually crazy how difficult it is to say, like, I'll be like just listening to you talk for ages, and
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden, like, you'll stop talking. But because I'm so dialed in and casting with you, I can just go as soon as you stop. And vice versa, right? It's like we're just like chilling with each other and having that natural synergy going. But when the ball is being bounced between us, it's like you say, there's no downtime. It's like as soon as that ball bounces, it's like it's you're now dribbling it, and it's like the flow still going.
Yeah.
And we set each other up for like alley oops and all kinds of stuff, you know?
We could work on that, just setting the setups, that type of thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's there, just needs to be polished, like you said.
Well, yeah, and it will come with time because, as you say, it's like the more we do this, the more natural it'll be. It already is kind of like that now, right? Like it's not like we're sweating and like we're shaking with anxiety while we're casting. We're actually,
Mm.
fairly competent at it. We're kind of adept right now. We're trying to be masterful. You know what I mean? Like we're in the process of turning that adeptness into mastery.
Right. Well, man, I think we've almost gone 4 hours, bro. I think we need to cut this one off.
Yeah, we can do that.
It's been a good run, guys. We had some interesting conversation here. Maybe a little background knowledge about the two of us. Get to know us a little bit better. We've got to know each other a little bit better as well, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy actually. Each week I feel like I'm a little bit closer to you, and I'm all about it.
Nice. So we'll be back next week, guys. Make sure to give a like on the video, maybe share it with your friends if you're really enjoying these conversations. We're going to keep going. We're going to put the effort in to continue to improve the podcast here, just like we do with KCM and our other projects, our co-operative projects here,
Yeah.
products. Should be a better audio quality. This one, I know that the visual is probably going to look a lot different, but that's just because we're using a different medium for communication in this video. Yeah. Anything else you want to say, Shun?
Yeah, I'll just wrap up by saying, so please do not hesitate, guys. If there's anything you would like to hear us discuss on the podcast, either a particular topic or subject or something happening in the world, tell us in the comments. We'll be definitely considering that. We want you guys to also be involved in the conversation a little bit and maybe bring some talking points to the table, and we'll do our best to explore those for you. And besides that, I just want to say, like, a pleasure as always, Sam. A little quick explanation on why everything's a little bit different now. Basically, we wanted to increase the bit rate on Discord for when we're casting and doing this recording for the podcast here. So we're using a boosted server instead and increasing the bit rate of the channel to like 256 kilobits rather than 64. So hopefully I sound tiny bit better for you now because Sayan's recording me via Discord.
Right. So hopefully it sounds better. Let us know in the comments down below, guys. That's it for today. See you next time.
Peace.